Thank you for joining us this afternoon on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. James is here, and for Carlene. How are you doing, James?
I'm doing good, Nick. You?
I'm doing well. These 15-minute weekends are something, huh?
I know what you mean.
The weekend just kind of flew by, but we're back here, and I'm glad to be back here with you. We have a lot going on today, a lot happening in the world of news, some stuff happening live, but also some stories that we are following that are developing. Let's start with it. These are our top headlines right here on the sides. Let's start over in Chicago, Illinois, where swarms of people descended on Chicago's Michigan Avenue over the weekend to protest President Trump's plan to deploy federal troops to Chicago and ramp up immigration enforcement operations. So, again, those protests, if you're familiar with the Chicago area, started around the intersection of the IDB Wells Drive and Michigan Avenue, which is Michigan Avenue, obviously a busy area in Chicago. That's near Chicago's Grant Park. So we continue to keep an eye on that situation, ever-evolving situation in Chicago, Illinois. Second big headline, we got a report over the weekend that a Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officer who died by suicide in July may be the first known police officer in the U.S. to have suffered from CTE. Again, that's according to a report. Brent Simpson, a K-9 officer, took his own life back on July 1st, and his widow learned about his CTE diagnosis earlier this year. That's according to the New York Times. It's what the New York Times is reporting. If confirmed, Simpson would be, again, the first known police officer in the nation to suffer from this traumatic brain disease. We'll have a live interview coming up in our 1 o'clock hour with a local doctor, brain specialist, speech pathologist, to talk about CTE and the symptoms and just learn more about it. Also, too, President Trump says he'll look into Charlotte's deadly transit stabbing. Again, this is that deadly stabbing on the light rail in Charlotte's South End, receiving national attention. The video came out about a week ago, on Friday, and it just exploded on social media. Trump was asked about the stabbing at an appearance in Maryland over the weekend. He said he wasn't aware of the situation, but said it was hard. Well, his team looks to go through that video and go through and debrief on some of that information in that investigation over the week, today actually. And then now we're following 6 people killed. This is our last headline. In Jerusalem, 2 gunmen opened fire at a Jerusalem bus stop on Monday, killing 6 people and critically injuring 7 others. That's according to NBC News. And we do have a report from Richard Engel. Let's go to Richard Engel with more on that, on the latest developments there in Jerusalem. Against 2 gunmen opened fire at a bus stop there, killing 6 people. Let's take a listen to that.
This is where the shooting attack happened this morning, and it is extraordinary how quickly things return to normal here. We are right at the entrance of Jerusalem along one of the major highways, and people here are now waiting for the buses to arrive. A bus is coming up right now. But just a few hours ago, there was another bus here that was attacked, and on this street there were bodies, there was blood. What happened this morning around 10 o'clock in the morning, according to Israeli police, 2 terrorists came. They were armed with multiple weapons, and they got to this bus stop and opened fire on civilians. Police say in addition to the guns, they also found ammunition. Israeli media say that the 2 attackers were Palestinians and that they came from the West Bank. This comes as Israel's in the midst of escalating a major offensive against Gaza City and has been knocking down tall buildings as ground troops prepare to push deeper into the center of Gaza City, which is the largest city in the Gaza Strip. What happens now? This will certainly escalate tensions. We've already heard from Israeli officials saying because of this attack, they need to meet, they need to reassess the situation, and that they will not stop their military offensive in Gaza and need to re-examine security measures here in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. Richard Engel, NBC News, Jerusalem.
And again, that's a story that from NBC News we'll continue to keep our eye on. So we want to go back to another story that we mentioned in our top headlines, story that has grabbed national attention. Just to kind of pull back the curtain here, we have the network, what's happening on network TV right in front of me. So, a lot of times we see what's happening nationwide and what networks are doing right in front of me at these TVs. And the story that's started here locally, and again, that has grabbed national headlines, is that stabbing on a Cat's light rail that happened recently. President Donald Trump asked about it in Maryland over the weekend, said he wasn't aware of the situation, but said it was horrible. He said, quote, yesterday, "I'll know all about it by tomorrow," when asked if he's seen the video. Again, this is a story that, that video, surveillance video from the light rail from that incident back on August 22nd came out on Friday. WCNC Charlotte's Jesse Pierre was able to get that video. I don't have too many words to say about that video, Jesse. It's tough to watch, and it's been all over social media since this weekend. You're continuing to follow this story. Kind of walk us through what you're doing today.
So, like you mentioned, that video is hard to watch. Cats and investigators confirmed that the DeCarlos Brown, who's a suspect in this case, did not know Irina Zarutska. This attack was unprovoked. This was a random attack. And when you watch the video, you see that he's sitting on the train, and she eventually just comes in. She sits directly in front of him, in the row in front of him, and then out of nowhere, 4 minutes later, he takes out a pocket knife and he stabs her several times. So unprovoked, random attack. And, I spoke to a former FBI agent last week, and he talked about how this was something that could happen anywhere and something that could have happened to anyone. It could have happened at a grocery store. He could have pulled out a pocket knife and stabbed somebody. He could have done it, you walking down the street. It just could have happened anywhere. And this incident has raised a lot of questions about safety and security on Cat's public transportation. So one of the things that was brought up is, if there was security patrolling the area, would that have served as a deterrent? We don't know, right? When you're dealing with someone who's not in the right mental state, we don't know what would stop them or not, right? There were still cameras which captured the incident. That cameras can serve as a deterrent and so forth. Cat says that they have done several things, and they plan to continue to do several things to enhance safety, security, including increasing security patrols and so forth, upgrading cameras as well, and they've also already stepped up patrols on the blue line. Now, there is also questions about mental health, and also if there are gaps in the criminal justice system, because this man, Brown, has a long criminal history. And again, when we're looking at this incident, it's not clear if he was, dealing with any specific issue there. He's not doing too much. He's shifting his seats and so forth. But his attorney has filed a motion to have his competence evaluated in this case. Mm-hmm. But there was another case where he was arrested in January, where he called police. I would actually have to pull it up, but he called police because he felt like someone was. It's a very weird story.
Like he was going through an episode or something.
Well, that's when I read the narrative of the story. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Okay.
And so he wanted help for something. Someone's forcing him to do something, and he then calls the police while the officers are there, not helping him. I guess to what he believes is his ability, the best ability. He calls police on them, or calls police, or calls 911 again to get help on this situation, and so he gets arrested for misusing 911. In that case, in I think July, they filed for his competence to be evaluated then, right?
Yeah.
And so, to me, from January to this, this next case and so forth, it sounds like mental health is a thing. He also has been arrested multiple times. Now we're talking about things like robbery and this misuse of 911 and other, other petty crimes included as well. Mm-hmm. But this man has been arrested so many times, in and out of jail, in and out of the justice system. But and again, I don't have a full file on him, but it sounds like when it comes to the mental health system, where are the gaps there, right? Yeah. If you're, and I believe and when I did the background check, or when I saw the background check, it seemed like he was noted as homeless at the same a couple times here and there too.
Yeah.
And so, where is the access to mental health for people like him who are struggling and so forth? One thing Kat says is that they do have an increase of number of people who are homeless or struggling with mental health that are ending up on their buses and trains, and that's something I already heard from Kat's bus driver saying that's a hard thing. And then it's like that in between. Do I fight for them to pay or just let them on so they don't make trouble? You know what I mean? But where are the resources to help those people? So then it's just like the cycle. They just come in, they're around and so forth. But we know that they're not in the right mental capacity, but they're just here and among. And so when something happens like this, there's a reaction, but what could have been done to prevent this, or what could have been done to give him some support? Kat says they have this program called Connect, where they're trying to connect folks who are homeless or with mental health illness, to different resources and housing and different things like that. And they're looking for partnerships to be able to expand on that. And so that is one way to help. But when I spoke to mental health experts, which you'll see in my stories later today, they're talking about a lack of staffing when it comes to mental health services, a lack of beds for inpatient care, and then you just have a lot of different issues when it comes to access to be able to connect folks who need, especially those who need it the most.
They're stretched thin.
And so you have people who are falling through those gaps and not getting the resources that they need. Now, with that said, just because you have a mental health illness or so forth doesn't mean you're going to commit a crime. However, if you're untreated, and if you have other strains in your life, you know what I mean? You can be harmful to yourself and somebody else. So, that's kind of what I'm digging deep into. I think that, yes, safety and security is a big thing, obviously, on the, public transit system, especially when they're looking at, getting that red line and that sales tax and so forth. But I think it goes bigger and goes deeper than that. Mental health, where is there a gap, and how did he fall through the cracks there? And then the judicial system, if he's in and out of jail and so forth, how do we connect the mental health and criminal system to make sure that, yes, this person's in and out of jail, but there's obviously not there's a mental health issue there. Should he just be roaming streets freely like that? So there's so many different questions and things like that, and
so many different factors. Like it's just, obviously you see the video, you read the story, and yes, but there's so many other factors as you're laying out that it's just not that simple.
It's
as
not.
Tragic as this is, it's not that simple.
Exactly. And I think even finding resources and answers and, coming to a point where, we have the adequate amount of resources to, to have prevention, intervention, and so forth. It's going to take some time, but it's going to take money, right? It always comes down to funding. With more money, you can get more people. With more money, you can get more facilities built. With more money and investment in prioritizing this as an issue, you'll be able to help more people.
A lot unpacked there. Jesse is reporting on the story. One of Bria Smith also following up on the story as well. Jesse, thank you for your time. You can catch Jesse. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jesse. 4 and 5.
4 and 5 tonight.
4 and 5. You can catch a story, and then you can see it on our digital platforms. Again, Jesse, thank you for your time. I know you're a busy woman. She's headed out of here to continue her story for the day. All right, so let's move on. Let's take a quick break. Let's take a 2-minute break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNT Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Sorry for the technical mishap. So we kind of showed you where we want to take you next. We want to take you to New York City, where mayoral candidate, NYC mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is speaking. Looks like a sort of one-on-one situation that's happening right now.
Yeah, he's at the Columbia School of Journalism there in New York.
Okay, so let's take a listen into what he's saying right now.
Uprooting of corruption at the highest levels of the NYPD, but also some of the decisions that were being made from a place of, does this deliver public safety? Does the NYPD having a more than 80-person communications team deliver public safety? No, that relationship is minimal. And she made the decision of cutting it down to about 40 or so. That's something that I was calling for early in this campaign. And I think that it always has to come back to, is this actually delivering that?
Let me ask you about a bunch of different policies just to kind of get your thinking out there. If city council legislation to abolish the NYPD gang database were to pass, would you support and sign that?
I have supported that proposal. It's one that I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant about late social media, so much of the facts of life of being a young New Yorker, and yet it then becomes a mark of suspicion. And it is a concern of mine that we do not live up to, of all people, Eric Adams's words in 2021, who said that New Yorkers need not choose between safety and justice. Mm-hmm. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
Okay. In the past decade, the city has invested in violence interrupter programs, the Cure Violence model. By the way, a lot of their vans were out there at the parade
Yes.
the other day. And I remember thinking, that's not the model I remember researching and reporting on over the years, that it was much more subtle, it was personal, it was one-on-one, it wasn't like big Sprinter vans spray painted on the side with logos and stuff. But putting that aside, have the Cure Violence efforts been effective, and how would you support, change, or even abolish them?
You know, Baltimore has been in the news quite a bit with President Trump especially. And one thing I've admired about the mayor of Baltimore is that when he came into office, he did a full investigation, and they found that 2% of Baltimore residents were responsible for more than up to 75% of homicides and shootings. And there had been attempts in Baltimore of a cure violence approach, of violence interruption, but it had never been done at a systemic scale in the manner that you had alluded to, of being able to work across agencies, having buy-in. And he created this. And we have seen that they are now on track for the lowest number of homicides in recorded history. And I think more than a 20% decline in shootings. And we've seen here in New York City, we have the crisis management system, CMS. It's been proven to be effective at reducing shootings by up to 40%. Yet it's only in operation in, I think, 28 of the more than 70 police precincts. And oftentimes where it is in operation, it's not being fully funded. And this past week, I was in the Bronx at Lincoln Hospital. I met the head of Guns Down, Life Up, this incredible organization that does this exact kind of work. And as he was explaining what the work is, he was telling me, unlike many, they're embedded in the hospital. They're immediately notified when a victim of gun violence comes into the hospital. They go immediately to the bedside. And there was actually a young man next to me when he was telling me the story. That young man, this was his story. He had been attacked. He had gone to the hospital. And as he was starting to think about retaliation and how he would respond, he was instead met by this program. And he happened to be homeless at the time. He was living in a shelter. They got him out of the shelter. They got him housing. They got him a job. He now works at that organization. And so to me, it shows the multifaceted approach that's necessary in tackling the scourge of gun violence. And so what I would do is support a pure violence approach, the CMS system, we've talked about increasing funding by 275% as one part of the way in which we deliver public safety.
Okay. And would that too be under your Department of Community Safety?
Yes.
Under what circumstances, if any, should the NYPD be allowed to conduct surveillance of political or religious organizations?
I have many concerns about the history of surveillance we've seen in this city. You know, I represent Steinway Street in Astoria, and the NYPD had a unit, the demographics unit, which was tasked with surveilling Muslim New Yorkers, doing the most banal things: the barbershop, the travel agent, the hookah bar. There were even reports of when Muslims would play soccer at Astoria Park. And I think it has shown that there have too often been instances where just identity in and of itself is the basis of suspicion and the basis of surveillance. Mm-hmm. And I went to high school with someone who was pressured into becoming an informant. And so these kinds of approaches to surveillance have been ones that have truly torn at the fabrics of civic society. You know, part of the reason I'm sitting before you as the Democratic nominee is because of an increase in Muslim voter turnout unlike anything we've ever seen in the history of this city. And the reason that was so difficult, the reason it's taken so long, one of those reasons is that there are many whose experiences in the post-9/11 era, whose experiences of a demographics units, whose experiences of the NSEERS program have been experiences that have taught them that the safest place to be is in the shadows, and that the best thing you can do is to engage as little as possible with government around you. And I have deep concerns about the possibility of extending that era.
At the same time, would you acknowledge that it's an issue and it's a challenge, that if there are people who mean to do harm and they are hiding in the shadows, somebody's got to go and find them?
If there is actual intent, right? If there are those who mean to do harm, that is absolutely, to me, a different conversation. What I am concerned about is the many ways in which it was the stories of entrapment. And the desire to surveil, not on the basis of suspicion of that meaning, but rather that identity itself is a pretext for that.
Got it. I want to give you a hypothetical. Imagine an otherwise peaceful protest supporting, say, a Gaza ceasefire, and they're blocking a thoroughfare. They're doing things that would possibly make them eligible or subject to arrest. What are the limits of acceptable protest in your mind, and at what point should the police intervene?
You know, I think we have a proud history of exercising the First Amendment in this city, and it's one that should be protected. And much of this conversation around protests has also been a question of which police would respond to that protest. You know, I've been critical of the Strategic Response Group, a group that was founded in the mid-2010s with the intent of being a counterterrorism force that has now become the primary response to acts of protest. And I think that to say that we must separate the police presence at an act of, you know, the First Amendment versus countering terrorism is not to say that we should not have any presence. It is to say that we should learn from the models of cities around the country, around the world. I think one that's been of interest to me is in Columbus and the way in which they've approached some of these questions of how to have a police presence at these larger kinds of demonstrations.
Your platform calls for increasing resources for hate crimes enforcement. Does that mean more police involvement, or are you talking about other agencies?
My platform within the Department of Community Safety is focused on hate crime prevention programs. And that is, you know, we are talking about programs that have to do with education, that have to do with training, that have to also do with questions of, larger questions of curricula as well. And that is critically important because we've seen hate crimes continue across New York City. And we know that these are hate crimes where it's not just the impact it has on one person's life, but also the impact it has on entire communities of the lesson that it leaves them with about whether they have a place in public life. And I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers and many Muslim New Yorkers about the fears that they are left with whenever an incident like this takes place. Mm-hmm. And this program is in tandem with ensuring that you have police that are actually able to respond to that.
Well, what's your stance on school policing and the presence of armed officers in or around the public schools?
You know, I think it is an indication of this broken status quo that...
All right, so you're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serdervant. We are inching towards the top of the hour, 12:57. Thank you for hanging with us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. So happening right now, NYC mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is speaking. He's doing one-on-one situation there at Columbia University, Columbia's journalism school, actually. So that's happening live. We want to take a step back. We want to take a 2-minute break. I promise we'll be right back in 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Serdervant. James is here in for Carlene. Let's talk about a story we had as a top headline at the top of the show. So a Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department officer who died by suicide in July may be the first known officer in the United States to have suffered from CTE. Now, this is according to a report from the New York Times. We posted this on our website and our digital platforms over the weekend. Brent Simpson, a K-9 officer, took his own life on July 1st, and his widow learned about CTE, his diagnosis, earlier this year. She told that to the New York Times. So if this is confirmed, Simpson would be the first known police officer in the nation to suffer from a disease that we often associate with football, with boxing. I've seen soccer. I do want to point out, an article does lay out that police officers face numerous occupational hazards that could cause and contribute to brain trauma. So I just want to point that out. But here on the show, because I feel like there's still a lot of questions surrounding what CTE is. We have a woman who is an award-winning, nationally certified medical speech language pathologist and certified brain injury specialist with over a decade of experience in adult and geriatric care. She currently serves as the assistant clinical professor at Northeastern University. Dr. Kelly Utenham, How did I do with the last name? Uenham.
You did really well.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. Thank you for stopping by the studio. I think a lot of people would acknowledge that we first heard about CTE almost a decade ago, over a decade ago.
It was discovered in 2002 by Dr. Amalu.
Yeah, in the
Yes.
movie, the Will Smith movie kind of
Yes.
lays it out.
Yes.
I'm sure Hollywood made its own liberties of what to include and what to exclude. But what, for those who are unfamiliar, maybe have heard of it, but just are not exactly sure, what is CTE?
Good question. So CTE stands for chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and it is a neurodegenerative condition in the brain. And essentially, when you are subjected to repeated head injuries, much like can happen in the line of duty of being a police officer, a lot of times we think football and those repetitive hits to the head. And when that happens, those repetitive hits, or you are repeatedly getting concussed, it I won't get too nerdy on you, but
No, go ahead. You have we have the time, we have the runway.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So there are things within our brain called the tau protein, TAU, and essentially what happens is that protein misfolds and it becomes unusable, and that kind of creates a chain reaction in the brain, and that causes the cells around the brain to die, unfortunately. And so when you think about the different parts of the brain, so going around the brain, just the exterior, I always say that the brain is our motherboard. It controls everything. But if you consider the front part of your brain, that is your frontal lobe that deals with your problem solving, your impulsive control, your emotions, some memory. On the left and right side, you have your temporal lobes that transitions your short-term memory into long-term memory. It also houses your language center. In the back of your head, you have your occipital lobe, and that controls your vision. So a lot of times you'll hear athletes or people who may be concussed complain of blurry vision or having a tough time seeing double. And so when all of those parts are affected, I mean, you think about your personality, what makes you you, how you respond if someone angers you. All of those things, if they start to die because of CTE, then a lot of times what I hear in my practice and when I'm interviewing people or giving talks across the country is they're just not acting like themselves. This isn't like them. This is not how they act. And if you consider your brain the motherboard who makes you who you are, if parts of your brain are starting to die, then no, you are not going to show up like yourself. And so that is a common phrase that people will say to me when I give my talks.
It's similar to dementia.
Not
Okay.
So there are.
That's what.
Yes, it can be related
Okay.
to. So there are 4 stages of CTE. By the time you reach stage 4, you are in the stage where you're presenting like you have dementia.
Oh, so that's like a later stage. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
much later symptom, but you will start to see signs very early, having to do with memory, word finding. So if someone is saying, like, can you pass me that whatchamacallit, see if they can find out what that word is, because if they can't, then that is a sign that they are experiencing symptoms and they should be referred to a specialist like myself. So a lot of times people will hear speech language pathologists and they're like, oh, you help babies say rabbit instead of wabbit. And yes, we do. A lot of those are pediatric or school-based speech language pathologists, and they do a great deal of work. Medical speech language pathologists like myself, we deal with the adult population and more medical cases. So there are a lot more medical SLPs who are doing work in the realm of concussion and traumatic brain injury to help rehab. A lot of times even doctors, unfortunately, don't know the full scope of what speech therapists do. And so that's why it's important that I raise awareness like I do through my nonprofit, so that people understand that speech therapists, we can help to slow things like dementia. We can also help to rehab the cognitive deficits that show up in people who are concussed or who have repeated traumatic brain injuries.
I do want to get to your nonprofit in just a moment, but what do you tell parents, what do you tell adults about sports, about occupations that have to, or there's a risk of head trauma? I mean, look, we just had first weekend of NFL football. We all got excited about it, but we don't think about the risk. And also there are openings. We talk about a shortage of law enforcement officers. People want to be a law enforcement officer, go into the military, another occupational hazard. What do you tell those folks? Do you advise them in some sort of way?
That's a really good question. It's also very tough because this world, this country loves its sports, especially its football. We have a huge respect for the police. My stepfather, he was a police officer. He died in the line of duty, unfortunately. So that there is a big risk in so many different ways. But when I stand in front of people and have to talk to them about this, it's tough and it can really upset some people. I have to wave my white flag and say I'm a former athlete. I love sports. I am not trying to bring harm. And also just say, like, don't shoot the messenger, because the information that I have to share is very scary, but that's not my intent to scare people. I just want them to have more options. And so I will explain to them the risks. I will explain that it's not just a concussion. People hear concussion either from coaches or teammates or people that are on the force, their brothers in blue, and they hear the concussion piece and they think, well, it's not that big of a deal. And unfortunately, it very much is, because the body does remember the score. And so the number of concussions that you have over a period of time can really add up. And so having 3, 4, 5, 6 concussions can really increase your risk for death. It can increase your risk for having a completely different life. And unfortunately, especially in young people now, we're finding that brain injuries and concussions are more detrimental to them because if you think about young athletes, they don't have the adult musculature and structures that we do. And so if you are adding weight, like a helmet, like a guardian cap, which I know that those are in the sports realm pretty heavy right now, that adds weight to an already pediatric body, and so that's actually increasing the damage that can be done. And so when that happens, we also have to think about the kiddos who are in school and how they're showing up with likely misdiagnosis. So there are people who show up, young people that show up like they have ADHD or like they have ODD, obstinance defiance disorder, or some other behavioral issue, but people aren't asking, has your child ever had a concussion? Has there ever been a brain injury, for a doctor to potentially diagnose them as having X, Y, and Z? And a lot of medical schools in America and in Canada don't have curriculum that is specific to concussion. So a lot of times people who don't go to doctors who are experts in brain injury or concussion, even there are neurologists who are not experts in concussion and can misdiagnose or miss some things. And you know, medical school, there's a lot to cover, so I completely understand, but I would love to allow people to know to even ask these questions. There have been people who are in meetings with children and the speech therapist can ask, has your child ever had a history of a brain injury? And I know for a fact this one answer was, no, they've never had a brain injury. And the mom took a moment to think, and she said, well, there was that time that the TV fell on his head. So there could be a direct correlation. And so you think about that with, I believe this officer was, he played football. He also had a military background. And so you can see that a lot with military personnel. They're a higher risk for CTE because of the blast that they sustain and the different trauma that happens to the brain. And if you think about, this is my favorite analogy, using an egg and a helmet, because a lot of people think, well, you know, military, they get helmets, athletes, they get helmets, but helmets are designed to protect or prevent skull fracture, not from preventing concussion or brain injury. So if you think about an egg, the raw egg, there's a yolk on the inside, and just like our brain, it's not attached or fixed to the skull. So the shell is not fixed to the yolk. But if you take the egg yolk or the egg and you shake it, is that yolk on the inside shaking? Yes, of course it is, yes. Just like the brain on the inside of the skull. So if I were to take that raw egg and I was to wrap it in 100 feet of bubble wrap, and if I tossed it to you or anybody else, if you caught it or dropped it, is the yolk still going to shake? Yeah. Yes, it is. And so there's a false sense of security around helmets and around guardian caps that make athletes, their parents, the coaches, referees, fans, everybody feel like there's a safety that is not as high as they would like to think that it is. Yeah. And so we also have to consider that on the inside of that eggshell, it's also smooth. the interior of our skull is actually very jagged and sharp. So when you do take a hit, and the human brain can get concussed between 50 and I want to say 120 G's of force. To get whiplash, you only need 4 G's of force. So there are professionals that need to be included on all of these kinds of teams that don't get mentioned, like speech therapists, like chiropractors, because if you're getting whiplash at 4 G's, that means that the nerves that go from your brain to the rest of your body are now getting pinched or misaligned. And so even from seeing a chiropractor, seeing a medical speech science pathologist, and or seeing a neurooptometrist, because a lot of things happen with athletes, police officers, military personnel with their vision, and they're not even aware of it. So even the way that they track, can their eyes track at the same time? Is one eye tracking and the other one is kind of jumping and having a harder time? That's going to make it harder for police officers to do their job. It's going to make it dangerous for them to drive. Same thing with athletes. It's going to be difficult for them to carry out what they have to. Can they catch? Can they run? Can they see straight? And so when those things are shoved down, because we do live in a society where it's a get tough, don't say anything, just deal with it kind of energy, then you have people who are putting their lives, their teammates, their brothers in blue, and a lot of other people at risk because of the hush, don't say anything, and just deal with it kind of mentality.
I think about my short-lived football career in high school and middle school, and you know, a couple of things that stick out as you were saying that. You know, you're just seeing stars, or you get your bell rung, or make sure you have a mouthpiece in, because that's going to prevent a concussion. That was the conversation. That was literally the conversation.
Still being had.
Yeah, and this was 16, 17 years ago.
They're still saying these same untrue things.
Wow.
Yes. And the same stay in the dark for weeks, just don't do anything, stay off your devices. And now we're learning that that advice can actually be counterproductive and can cause more harm than good. But that's still being advised to athletes and anybody else who's sustained a concussion. The number one cause for concussion are falls. And so people get concussed and they may or may not go to the hospital, just like you said. It's a concussion, I got my bell rung, I saw stars. Those are all concussions, but because they're said in that whimsical kind of cutesy way, it's not taken as seriously. So when you have someone like this officer that we're talking about, Officer Simpson, he very well could have sustained multiple concussions playing football. He could have sustained multiple concussions in the military, definitely in the line of duty of being a police officer. But as I tell the people in my audience, it's not always, you're not always getting a sterile brain to begin with. If you're looking at someone who's playing sports at a very young age, it could be someone who's subjected to domestic violence, to child abuse, or it could be somebody who just had fun playing on the playground and they got concussed, you know, 2 or 3 times as a kid. And one, they don't know to say, you know, I have had a concussion, or I've had one too many bells that have been rung and I need some support to help. So it'll come out as, you know, this child is bad, or this child needs a diagnosis, or this child needs medication. And so you could be medicating a child that doesn't need to be medicated. They could be seeing a speech therapist or another specialist who can help them with their behaviors and help to rehab what has been damaged.
Wow. What are the conversations like for caregivers, for family members at the point of diagnosis of CTE? Because one, it's coming to grips with the diagnosis, and then two, it's what's next? So what is that conversation like?
It's a very scary conversation. It's not a fun conversation. While I haven't been in the room for a CTE conversation, I have spoken to people who have been in them. The one I'm thinking about is someone who was an NFL player, and the depression that comes afterwards, because to be a football player, especially in this country, as I talked about, there is a lot of praise and you're famous, you're a star, you're important. And then when you have to protect yourself, your brain, you know, for yourself, for your family, for your future, there can be feeling bad about yourself. There's depression, and That's where a lot of thoughts of suicide or actual acts of suicide take place. September 10th is Suicide Prevention Day. And so there's a lot of information that's being shared regarding that. But it is a very tough position to be in, because when you are in these positions that can result in CTE, a lot of that is your identity. So if you're a military member and that's been your career, a lot of the questions are, who am I if I'm not fill in the blank? A police officer, an athlete, a military member. And so there are services and wonderful organizations that are being developed now that they're seeing what a big issue this is, to help people find ways after whatever it is that they are done with it. So whether that's an athlete or a military person, someone who is in law enforcement, just learning that there are ways after whatever your route is, and that there is a life after it. Because a lot of times when we're dealing with CTE, it is at the point where it's a life or death situation. If you have watched the Aaron Hernandez special on FX, now when I talk to people about this, I encourage them to, one, go back and watch the docuseries and see if you can tell where the CTE spells are. They use the camera equipment to show when he's in a spell, because the camera gets a little fuzzy and the movement, it's kind of like he's in a haze or a daze. And so I encourage that, and I also encourage people to watch League of Denial, which is a free documentary on PBS, which talks about the
really
awareness. Awareness of CTE in the athletic realm.
And the Boston Globe does did a great podcast before the Aaron Hernandez sort of series on FX. I think Netflix did one as well.
Yes.
But the Boston Globe, it came from the Boston Globe. They did really good. I know it's just a podcast, you can't watch it, but they really sort of spell out what you're talking about right now. I do want to talk about your nonprofit and talk about the work you're doing. Because I've seen some of the clips, I've seen some of the pictures. I mean, you're really in front of an audience, and you're busy with in itself with the work you do. But why did you want to start a nonprofit, and why did you want to add more to your plate?
Well, I was voluntold to start a podcast, and it is Brain Talk Foundation. And I also have a podcast. It's called Candid Conversations with Dr. Kelly, where I'll talk with athletes, professional athletes, as well as parents and coaches, people who are within the realm, as well as military personnel, veterans, people who have been diagnosed with suspected CTE, and really just keep the conversation going. But Brain Talk Foundation was started out of oh my gosh, I can't believe people don't know this kind of conversation. So I was invited to be a keynote at South Carolina State Convention, SCISHA. And one of the talks that I did was on concussion, traumatic brain injury, and CTE in athletes, and the SLP's role, speech language pathologist, because that's what I am. And I was speaking with my colleagues, and I had this whole 90-minute presentation, and afterwards, there was such a long line of SLPs who were asking me, like, I think my son might be showing signs, I think my husband, or even themselves, and they were asking all of these questions, and I was thinking, like, if my colleagues don't know this, what are the chances that my neighbors know this, or that the people I go to church with know this, or the people that I'm, grocery shopping with? Chances are that they don't. And as I said, I'm a former athlete, so I know the benefit and the beauty of being on a team, or, just the responsibility that comes with it, the camaraderie. And so many people can look at athletics and have positive things to say. But I wanted people to no longer have to say, I wish I would have known.
Right.
And so to hear those heartbreaking stories of, a mother whose son died by suicide, or a dad who was on the sidelines and saw his kid change forever because he was body slammed on his head and lost 39 points on his IQ. Those are people that I've interviewed on my podcast. Wow. And to hear those stories, I am just doing my very best through the nonprofit to get in front of as many audiences as I can to share this message so that people can actually know, and I can raise the awareness, because while I may not want to stop everyone from playing a sport that they're that they love. I don't want to stop people, but I want them to know that there are options. I interviewed Emmanuel Acho on my podcast, and he had a completely different plan than get to the NFL and just be a lifer. He had a great plan of have 3 years and then have an agent who gets you a really good contract, and then you can be out in 3 years, but you still get your full benefits. You still are able to be a successful broadcaster, and he still has, you know, his faculties about him. So there are other ways, and I would just like for people to know you can have your cake and you can eat it too, but you can do it in a responsible way where you're going to have your brain at the end of it.
You can do what you love. I'm thinking of my nephew who plays football in South Carolina. And so, you know, he's always talking about playing at the college level. He's in high school now. So it's great information for guys like him, for parents. And so much great. I feel like I learned so much in this interview. Before I let you go, you've been so generous with your time. Where can folks find you? Because they're going to look at this interview and they're going to, all right, they're going to be doing their Googles. Where can they find you?
They can find me on social media, on all platforms. I am at Dr. Kelly Brain Talk SLP. That's DRKELLI Brain Talk SLP. And they can also go to the website, which is braintalkfoundation.org. And from there, you'll be able to reach out if you're interested in contacting me to come and speak at any of your venues.
We have to have you come back on the show, Dr. Kelly.
Absolutely.
This is only the first time. Thank you for your time. Thank you for stopping by Live Impact News. All right, so let's shift gears. James, where do you want to go next? Let's take a break. Let's take a 2-minute break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
Now, here live in on WC Plus to the latest on the passing of One Big Beautiful Bill, the act which the Trump administration is now calling the Working Families Tax Cut. And just yesterday, House Speaker Mike Johnson touting the bill's benefits, saying he spent plenty of his time during August traveling his district. He got positive reactions. Today we are joined now by Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina's 5th District, which includes serving York, Chester, and Lancaster counties. Thank you for joining us here on WCNC Plus, Congressman.
Glad to be with you. And through the political process of if we made changes and if it went back to the Senate, then you had 3 senators that were going to block it. Tom Tillis is not running for office. He's no fan of the president. Lisa Murkowski's term will be past when Donald Trump leaves office. She's no fan of Donald Trump. Rand Paul is no fan of Donald Trump and will vote no. So those were the 3. What we risk, had we altered it, was no bill at all, which many of the senators did not want anyway, including the tax cuts. We were not going to let that happen. So when the president told us that, we got on board, passed it, and the rest is history. The country is better off for a tax cut plan that really truly benefited the whole country, and particularly my state of South Carolina.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the benefits then for South Carolina families that you're highlighting, including that tax cut. Who specifically is really going to benefit from this most?
Everyday working Americans. No tax on tips, had a limit of $25,000. Deduction of interest with cars that are made in the United States. It's child tax deduction. We would have seen, Jane, a 26% increase had we not passed this tax bill. And it really is a working class tax bill for all Americans, but in South Carolina, manufacturing is a big thing that it helped. For that farmer who wants to pass on his farm to a family and not face a inheritance tax, that the Biden administration would have cut that limit down dramatically. It was just a win for the American people. And I hadn't seen a tax bill like this, or a big, beautiful bill that was encompassed so much in my 8 years in Congress. But if you roll it back even past that, 35 years, 40 years, we've never had a Congress get together on this. He funded the border. What the Biden administration did to this country by opening the doors to every country is now being corrected. So all in all, it was a great win. Would I have rather seen more cuts? Yes. But we did what we could while we could do it, and this was the best that we could do, and I'm excited we passed it.
Let's talk about the implementation for work requirements for able-bodied adults on Medicaid. Can you explain some of these requirements who would be able to go back to work, and then perhaps some of the safeguards in place for those who might lose coverage?
Yeah, and the work requirements are really important, but let me explain what that encompasses. When they say work requirements, it means 20 hours a week. Now, you think how many hours you put in on reporting, and most Americans put in far more than 20 hours a week. But the guardrails were 20 hours a week. It could be community service. It could be a variety of things. If you had, I think if you were over a particular age, it's only applied to, I think, 58 and under, or maybe 55 and under. They had, if you had any kind of physical ailment, for that single mom who was pregnant, they had waivers for that. So the safeguards were in place. But bear in mind, for your listeners, 20 hours a week, that's a low threshold. I would have rather seen 35 or 40 hours, but again, we couldn't get the passage of that. So you take what is possible and don't let perfect get in the way of the possible, as they have always said.
Sure. I hear it's now the working families tax cut. Is that a strategic rebranding, and does it have more public support than, say, the One Big Beautiful Bill?
You know, messaging is, as you know, in this world today is important. I do think the new name is more applicable because that's what it is. If we hadn't have had anything else but the tax cuts part of this, it would have been worth passing. But we got legitimate cuts. We got, on the reconciliation, we got guardrails. You know, we had a $2 trillion cut. We had a 1.6 threshold, but it went up to $2 trillion. We had a 2.6% growth rate because what this president has done is energized all sectors of our economy, particularly in South Carolina, and we have businesses that want to locate there. So all in all, I think the name does have meaning, and I think it's the right thing to do.
To your constituents who might feel a little insecure now, especially the low-income families, about losing possible access to health care or food care assistance programs, what is your message to them today?
My message to them is if they analyze what was passed, it benefits everybody. The median income in South Carolina is $67,000. I think the poverty level is right at 30 for joint home, 30-some thousand. Bottom line, if you want a job, if you want to go to work, if you want to get an education, the areas to get that. What we're trying to do, and we've begun the process for that young American who is wanting to get ahead, wanting to apply their God-given talents, this enables them to do this. We're shrinking government. So anybody that has concerns, and I have had some, I mean, what our opponents on the left is saying, cuts to Medicaid, cuts to Social Security, which we couldn't do, and it was, throwing Granny off the cliff. That's just not right. It's a mischaracterization. They always use that, but look at the country. Look at the country now as opposed to a year ago under Biden or the previous 4 years. There's no comparison. I think if people were honest with themselves, it's a safer feeling now, and it's a feeling that you can invest in this country and you can find a job, particularly in my state of South Carolina and North Carolina.
And you said you'll keep fighting for the rest of the provisions that didn't make it into the final bill. For you, what are your priorities for any future legislation?
Well, we've got a pocket rescissions coming of basically a foreign aid. I think in this country we have been the world's keeper. And when you ask yourself the question, where's this money coming from? It's borrowed money. America needs to take care of America. We cannot be the world's keeper because we're not in a position to do that. I think we've begun the process. I think what the Doge Commission did to identify those areas that money should not have been allocated. Should we allocate $3 million to show Sesame Street in Iraq? Should we allocate the $40 million for building walls in Libya and other countries? I would make the argument we can't afford that, and it's not fair to the younger generation as well as all Americans to keep that kind of spending. Bottom line, Jane, we've got a spending problem. We don't have an income problem. And we've got to tackle it now. And if not now, I don't know when we do it.
All right, last question, Congressman Norman. Looking ahead to the midterm elections, how confident are you in the working families tax cut? How will voters see that legislation benefit their daily lives? Will they see it by then?
Oh, yeah. Voters are already seeing it. I mean, they're voting with, you're seeing it in two ways. Those states who are not embracing the big beautiful bill or the things that Donald Trump has. You look at New York, people are fleeing, which once was a great state, and they're coming to areas here in South Carolina and the southern states. Look at California. Totally overrun by government, and that's not America, and that's not the way. So yes, we're going to keep the midterms. We've got some great candidates coming up. I'll be working for candidates. And the left now, the Democrat Party is now the socialistic party of open borders, open crime, and that's not what's built this country, and I think the American people realize that.
Congressman Ralph Norman of South Carolina's 5th District, thank you so much for your time and for weighing in.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. James is here. So we want to get to a story that we've been following, and we had Jesse Pierre on talking regarding the mental health aspect of things and filling the gap regarding the story. Irina Zaruska, who was stabbed to death while riding the Blue Line in Charlotte's South End last month. Now, that attack has sparked discussion about safety on public transit. The man who is caught on video accused in her killing, DeCarlos Brown, is facing first-degree murder in connection with the killing of Irina Zaruska on August 22nd. So we've been covering the story, following the story, and we're able to find that Brown had 14 previous court cases within Mecklenburg County, and we wanted to dig more into that. So right now, Live Impact News, we have professor of criminal justice at App State University, Dr. Matthew Robinson here on the program. Dr. Robinson, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances, obviously.
Yeah, I guess let's start there. The video of the attack has been all over social media this weekend. It was released on Friday, been all over social media, and a lot of questions surrounding the man in the video, DeCarlos Brown. And I read there 14 cases within Mecklenburg County, and a big question I certainly got from friends and other people: how's this possible?
That's a great question. And, you know, when these things happen, that's what we inevitably ask. When someone has a long criminal record, we think that they should be, you know, off the streets, ideally for good, if necessary. But there's lots of potential answers. We'd have to look into the case specifically to figure out what he was charged with, how the cases were disposed of. There may be cases of plea bargaining where charges were filed down. There may be cases where cases were dismissed, even though he was charged. So we'd have to look at all of those facts in order to really know what was going on. But it's always really unfortunate when someone who has a long criminal record is out to harm other people.
Another question I got was, I guess, and again, it's hard to ask this question, but I have to ask it. But who is at fault? Who is to blame? Is it the justice system, or does this fall at the feet of city leaders?
Well, I wouldn't blame anyone other than the offender at this time.
Yeah.
Again, until all the facts come out. But sometimes there'll be, you know, what we would see as, or we would view as negligence on the part of the criminal justice system, actors working in the criminal justice system. There may be that cases that should have been that should have led to convictions did not, due to actions and decisions of policymakers and prosecutors' offices and things like that. But we just don't know enough about it at this point to say that for sure.
Yeah, and again, a tough question to ask, but it's a question that a lot of folks have had, and certainly I've gotten. Can you walk me through sort of the coordination between, when it comes to repeat offenders, law enforcement, the coordination between law enforcement, the courts, and mental health services? Can you walk me through that?
Sure. So, you know, first of all, when a case goes to the courts, when someone's been arrested and charged, law enforcement always cooperates with the courts, where they send officers to testify in terms of what they saw at a scene or what kinds of evidence they collected and that sort of thing. Mental health facilities would also be called in, particularly if someone has a history of mental health crisis or mental illness, you know, diagnosis. Then mental health professionals who work those cases would also be called in and coordinate with the courts as well as law enforcement. And then, of course, mental health and law enforcement works together. When there's a call of a dangerous person, they often work hand in hand to try to figure out how to help the person or get them off the streets if necessary for public safety.
Does public outcry, when it comes to, I guess when we look forward, do you think that will factor into future cases?
It often does. Prosecutor offices will make the best decision they think is justified based on the evidence first. The amount of evidence and the quality of evidence is the best determinant of what happens in a criminal case going forward. But public outcry and what victims' friends and families demand also often plays the role in decision making by prosecutors as well.
Again, this is Dr. Matthew Robinson with App State University, professor of criminal justice. You've been so generous with your time. My last question before I get you out of here: what would you want to see happen moving forward when it comes to? Look, North Carolina. There have been initiatives, and they're from the state level and also from local organizations to help repeat offenders. But what would you like to see happen when it comes to the justice system to sort of to aid that?
Ideally, the justice system will use evidence-based policies. There are things that we know work to deal with repeat offenders. There are things that we know work to deal with violent offenders. There are things that we know work to deal with mentally ill offenders. And these programs and policies have been summarized by websites such as crimesolutions.gov, which is a Department of Justice website. And so we know, what works to reduce these types of crimes. And so ideally, law enforcement agencies, for example, should review these policies and programs, which are, again, publicly available, and start to implement them at the local level. So we should see these policies in every city in America, as well as at state level. So that's ideally what I would like to see happen, is that these policies that have been carefully researched by researchers all over the country and documented to show effectiveness should be utilized in places like Charlotte to make sure these kinds of crimes are less likely to happen going forward.
Just a quick follow-up. That seems pretty simple, and it seems logical. Why, again, from your vantage point, do we continue to have this conversation and something like that hasn't been implemented?
Part of it is, these policies and programs may not be known about by law enforcement officials. So this is the job of people like me, academics, to bring this research forward to policymakers at the city and state level, for example, to let them know about these programs and policies so that they can be put into place. And that's one of the things I'm working on now, is summarizing this research for the public and for policymakers in order to bring it to them so that we can implement these types of programs and policies within law enforcement that are shown to work.
Dr. Matthew Robinson, criminal justice professor at Appalachian State University. Thank you for your time. Again, you answered a lot of questions that folks have had over the weekend. A lot of folks are upset after seeing this video, and again, had a lot of questions. So thank you for your time, for clearing up and giving some context on this situation.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Of course. Again, Dr. Matthew Robinson from App State University. All right, let's take a quick break. We're going to step aside for 2 minutes. We'll take a break. We'll be back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. Thank you for hanging with us here on Live Impact News this afternoon, a busy afternoon here as we are following stories, doing live interviews, and anything else that develops throughout this afternoon. We will bring it to you here and have been bringing it to you here on Live Impact News. Let's get a check of the forecast. It was a hot weekend, but it's getting cooler. It was a little bit. It felt like fall this morning. It felt like fall. Let's check in with meteorologist Majestic Storm for our full forecast.
Well, good Monday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. We started out the weekend feeling very summer-like, and then we were able to wrap it up feeling very much like fall. Boy, it felt nice this morning, and it's feeling really nice this afternoon as well. Whole lot of sunshine. Temperatures today will only rise really into the 70s, mid-70s today, but it's not just that drop in temperatures, but really it's that big drop in humidity that's making it feel so really nice and comfortable to be outside in. By tomorrow morning, mid-50s, that's what we're waking up to, another 70-degree day, and then mid to upper 80s as we're heading towards the middle to end of our work week. Now, there is one catch in our forecast, and that's going to be the breezy winds. You'll notice them here and there. They're going to be moving in from the north and the east. Some of those winds today gusting 25 to 30 miles an hour. So maybe you're going for a bike ride today. Maybe you're heading out to the golf course. You will notice those winds at times. They'll eventually die down, I'd say around dinner time and then afterwards. Throughout the day today, though, a whole lot of sunshine to get outside and enjoy. Oftentimes just a nice way to start out the new work week with all of that sunshine. Mid-70s, hardly any humidity. It's going to be so nice if you want to work out in the yard or maybe walk your dog later on tonight after dinner. If you're out in the mountains, lucky you. Not only is it gorgeous, but look at how cool it is today. Mid-60s out in Boone, 64 in Blowing Rock, up towards Fleetwood, also checking into those mid-60s. If you're in the foothills today, warming up just a little, but still very nice. 74 in Morganton, 73 in Lenoir. And as we're bringing it back home to the Queen City, not even touching 80 degrees today. 78 in Lincolnton and 78 for Concord and Rock Hill. Lancaster over towards Chesterfield, also topping off into those mid-70s. Again, that drop in temperature definitely feels nice, but that drop in humidity is what makes the air feel a little more crisp. Now, when we're in the middle of summertime, we oftentimes see our dew points into the 60s and 70s. Right now, it's going to be into the 40s and 50s. That means we have a lot of dry air that was pulled in from the north back behind a couple cold fronts that we had, especially as we started to feel those impacts on Sunday. High temperatures over the next 10 days, they look a little like this. Upper 70s today, tomorrow, and to our Wednesday. By the end of our work week, we'll start to see those temperatures climb just a bit, and we'll be back into the 80s, but still right around where we should be for this time of the year. Now look at these overnight lows. Are you ready for this cool air? This is a type of weather where, yeah, it feels nice to open up your windows to let in this cool air because, for one, it's refreshing, but also we don't have any humidity out there. Look at Boone, 39 for your low tonight, 49 in Morganton. That cool air will help to wake you right up tomorrow morning, and you can see those lows hold steady mainly into the 50s and 60s. Rain chances, we don't have any today, tomorrow, straight into Wednesday. We're staying very, very dry. Really, it's going to be all about the sunshine. Futurecast, as you're picking up those kids after school today, be a great day to go do something fun with them outside because it's going to feel very enjoyable, I think, for just about everyone. Rain chances really will be at 0 today throughout most of our work week and into the weekend. So if you have a garden, if you have flowers, maybe just a lawn that you're trying to keep green still, make sure you're watering it. We don't have a lot of rain in that 7-day forecast, but we do have sunny skies, 70s for our highs, and 50s for our lows. Hope you have a great week.
My bad, James. That was me.
We're both so eager to hit the
right. I had my hand on the button, and when you said 3, 2, and I was like, we'll see how it goes. Well, welcome back here. That was a look at your forecast. Feels great outside this afternoon, and even this morning it felt like fall. All right. Okay, so look, if you have sort of, especially if you're a Panthers fan and you have like a slight headache, it might not be because of allergies or sinuses. It's probably because we took a big L on Sunday. It wasn't pretty out there. It really wasn't. I watched the whole game because that's what fans do. But it was a tough watch to watch the Panthers out there. So let's check in with our friends with Locked On Panthers, Julian Council, also Danielle Stein, to recap Week 1.
NFL is finally back, officially Week 1, and of course we have to bring in Locked On Panthers' very own Julian Castle to break it all down.
Yep.
Panthers getting off to a start that has been consistent with the last couple of years, we can say, especially just under Bryce Young so far. So I wanted to get your first impressions of this Week 1 opening loss.
Yeah, first impressions, Danielle, is yikes. We're back at it again with the Panthers getting off to a horrendous start and embarrassing themselves and the fan base in one foul sweep. But it is just Week 1, which no one wants to hear that because they haven't been to the playoffs since 2017. And last year they get blown up 47-10. The year before that they lose. This is now, I believe, 4 straight years possibly, of starting off 0-1, and it's a trend that has been where Carolina has not played often in the preseason, which has a lot of fans wondering, are they prepared for the season? Even Dave Canales was asked after the game, what happens? What's the disconnect? And he can't answer that. So that is a problem for Carolina. So for them to come out and play the way that they play today, it is alarming. But again, just 1 week.
Right. And like we were just talking about, half of the teams in the NFL have to lose each week.
Sure.
So, at the end of the day, it's not the worst odds. But, of course, when you're looking at a game, focus is going to be on the quarterback. And coming into the season, everyone was looking at Bryce Young, hoping he's going to be taking that step forward, especially with how this team ended last year. People think maybe he turned a corner.
Certainly.
And he sure may have, but we saw what he did in this Week 1, and it did not indicate necessarily that there was that much forward progression in terms of his development. He showed a lot of frustration on his face visibly. He threw the helmet, things like that as well, and spoke about it a little bit afterwards in his press conference. What were your takeaways from Bryce's performance? I know you had a couple notes about him in terms of turnovers and interceptions as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of emotion that we really haven't seen from Bryce as starting quarterback here in Carolina when he has had a lot of games like today, unfortunately. And yeah, you mentioned the numbers I put out there over on social media. Bryce Young now in his 3 Week 1 starts has 6 interceptions and 1 fumble. 6 of those giveaways have resulted into points for the opponent, and that's 30 total points across the last 3 games in Week 1. So 10 Week 1 against the Falcons in his rookie debut, 10 last year against New Orleans, and 10 today against Jacksonville. And that's just not winning football. When your quarterback is throwing 2 interceptions and fumbling, you're not going to have success, whether it's Week 1, Week 7, Week 12, the playoffs, if they ever got there. That's just not what you want to see. And it's disappointing because you know that Bryce Young is capable of playing so much better than he played today. But we also, unfortunately, know he's capable of doing this. So I asked heading into the season, who is the real Bryce Young? Is it something in between what we saw Weeks 1 and Weeks 2 last year to what we saw in the final 9 weeks? Is it what we saw today? I don't know, but the consistency has to be there if Carolina is going to invest in him after this season, whether it be the 5th-year option or long-term. And what you saw today, that is alarming, especially that this is a trend where, whether it's been with Dave Canales or Frank Reich for that 1 year, he does not get off to a good start. Therein, the Panthers don't get off to a good start.
Yeah, and you mentioned that before. The people had that term Bama Bryce and wanted to see if Bama Bryce is going to be back. And of course, he would love to get back to the level of play that he was playing when he was dominating in college. But I think something interesting about Bryce is he's someone who's very attuned in his emotions and very he keeps his mental state, it seems, really clear when he's speaking to the media and everything out there. He talked about that frustrating moment when it was at 4th and 1 and he ended up airing it out. I think a lot of people had a lot of head scratches when they saw him. He had a couple of options and he ended up just throwing it away. And he talked about that one after the game too and said, it was a frustrating moment for me. It was more of a lapse of judgment. Do you see his confidence shaken at all, or do you think, hey, it's Week 1 and he can continue to be that confident Bryce Young in terms of his mentality?
No, I'm not concerned about his confidence at all. That was an interesting play. Certainly, you've seen that happen before. The only times I've truly seen that happen is in college. I've never really seen an NFL quarterback, even if it's Week 1, understood, not fighting for that extra yard to be able to get that first down, and that's a disappointing part of it. Mark Schlereth, who was on the Fox broadcast, and mentioned that JT Sanders was coming across the middle, was going to be open potentially for a touchdown, and for Bryce just to effectively give up on the play, I don't know how Dave Canales felt about that or how the team feels about it, but I'm not saying he quit on the play, but when you just throw it away and you don't at least try to scramble, where he had a lot of effective scrambles. And yes, there were guys right there in front of him. You want to see him go out there and try to fight for that yard, fight for his team, especially in a situation where you're starting the third quarter, you desperately need to get points, get off to a good start in that second half, and then just for that to be the response in that situation, that's disappointing to see. But I don't think that his confidence is shaken at all. It's just one of the things where you didn't see it, and he's like, okay, let me just get rid of the ball, not get hit, and, well, didn't really get to live to fight another down as they had to turn the ball over on down to that point in time.
This is not to negate that there were some positives that we did see out of him, of course, connecting with some of the weapons that he has, one of them notably T-Mac.
Yeah.
We know that Bryce was instrumental in bringing T-Mac into Charlotte, and they had, what, five connections for 68 yards together, T-Mac in his NFL debut. What are your first impressions? He was so close on a couple of plays. He had that one-handed catch that was almost crazy, but it obviously turned out to be a no play because of a penalty that was called and then also a touchdown that was dropped. So just impressions of what he did out there today.
I'm going to need the NFL replay office to go back and look at that and see if they can retroactively give him the reception if that indeed was a reception. But yeah, I thought overall McMillan was open a lot of the times and was able to connect on a couple of those throws across the middle on third downs, which was a good thing to see, especially for a guy who they selected 8th overall, being his rookie debut against a solid, not great Jacksonville secondary. And you mentioned, like, it wasn't just that play. There was a play later on in the game after the J.C. Horn interception where good defensive play, maybe a penalty, could have been a touchdown there. There's another time when Bryce Young got hit, and Mark Schlereth on the broadcast had mentioned that it looked like they were trying to target McMillan down the field for what could have been a touchdown. So if you're looking for any sort of positives from today, it would be that. Running the ball wise, okay. If you look at the running backs, maybe not as much, but in totality, any day where you're over 100 yards rushing in the NFL is a solid day for that rushing attack. But yeah, there's not a ton of great things to take away offensively. But if you want to take anything away, look at the rookie Tedro McMillan, and you can see a guy who can absolutely be a star and that X spot in this offense at wide receiver.
And one of the notes from this Panthers team, of course, was that continuity on the O-line. Of course, Ike Ekwonu was not out there as he's still recovering from that appendectomy. Some questionable snaps from center position from Austin Corbett, but overall they seem to hold their ground and do what they needed to do. It shows like they're taking a bit of a step forward as a unit, would you say? Yeah, and continuity is so important, and rarely do you see in the NFL, and this was mentioned plenty of times throughout the offseason, everybody from an offensive line unit coming back, having all 9 of their top guys. And there have been some injury concerns, as Robert Hunt had the foot injury last week, was able to play in the game. Damian Lewis missed a lot of time throughout training camp and preseason, so maybe they missed continuity there as far as that goes. Then, of course, Ike Ekwonu not being available, but it's not like Josh Nijman hasn't started. He started 3 games last year, mainly on the right side at right tackle for Taylor Moton when he was injured, but you had Brady Christensen if you needed to go to him, and I thought Josh Nijman played a fine game, and Dave Canales even brought that up prior to his film review that we'll do after the game, or when he gets back home to Charlotte tonight. But I thought overall they played fine. The concern, though, is what's going on with the snap surf Austin Corbett. Right. I'll be honest, Danielle, I've never had this many people calling to bench a center after week 1. And I get the Panther fan base is frustrated, but that is something that I had never thought I would see. I don't think they're going to bail on Corbett after 1 week. I don't know what the timing communication was with all of that. Neither of those bad snaps ever resulted into a catastrophic play, which certainly could happen, especially with the stature of the quarterback they have in Bryce Young. I'm sure they'll get that cleaned up. But that was one thing where you're like, what's going on there? I think it's Panthers fans and all NFL fans who have just been itching to talk football for the first time in months.
Absolutely.
And, they got to have something to complain about. But that's all right. Let's move on to the defensive side of the ball because we'll let that do the talking first. But we around here at WCNC Charlotte have been using the term historically poor defense in regards to their season last year. I think numbers-wise that backs up that saying as well. So this was the first time that we've been seeing this defense back out on the field. What were your impressions on that side of the ball?
Looked like the same old Panthers defense, unfortunately. And I know there was a lot of consternation about bringing back Ejiro Evero for the final year of his deal as Panthers defensive coordinator. And you looked and saw that out there today as for the 7th straight game, dating back to the end of last season, the Panthers have allowed at least 200 yards rushing to their opponent. That is not winning football in the NFL. Certainly, they won a couple of those games last year, but if they continue to have this trend, that will be a problem. And it's alarming because they brought in Turk Horton on the first day of the league negotiating period to stop this. They brought in Bobby Brown III to stop this as well. Christian Roseboom coming over from LA, Patrick Jones coming over from Minnesota. They were all supposed to be a part of improving the run defense along with Trevon Merrick, and we saw the same kind of issues we saw a year ago, especially on that 71-yard run from Travis Etienne. Great block by the tight end and great scheme by Liam Cohen, their head coach and play caller, where one of them gets taken out of the play, but then Merrick's not there to fill the hole. Then Nick Scott, who certainly had plenty of these moments last year, was not able to make the tackle, and if he does, it's a 12, 13-yard gain.
Right.
He doesn't, it's 71-yard gain, and on that touchdown drive, all 91 yards that Jacksonville had were on the ground. Like, that is unacceptable on every level for this to continue. And Dave Canales has asked plenty about this last year. Why is Gerald Vero still your DC? Do you feel confident about the scheme he's running? He said he likes the scheme. So if it's not the scheme, it has to be the personnel. They've added new personnel, and yet you got the same result, at least just for 1 week. But that is something that is very concerning to me, because that standard that has been set in the past, especially at the linebacker position, has not been met as of this moment in time, dating back the last couple of years of Gerald Vero as their DC. So, yeah, if that doesn't get cleaned up, whether Bryce Young holds on to the football or not, they will not be a good football team.
But we do also know they did bring in some rookies on the defensive side. You mentioned the linebacker, the two edge rushers with Princely Umenyelen and Nick Scorton. We're going to see them continue to develop as well. It's a defense that's meshing, like you just mentioned, a ton of new names on this group who are here to bolster it, and that's what you'd of course want to see during your preseason and during those preseason games. And that brings up that other argument when people were wondering, did the Panthers play their starters enough during the preseason? I think every team in the NFL wants to know if they got the most out of their preseason. Now looking back at it retroactively, do you like how the Panthers handled their preseason games in terms of using their players and their starters?
Well, I'll say this. San Francisco didn't play a lot of their starters, and they won today. Los Angeles, Sean McVay said from day one, I'm never going to play Matthew Stafford. He's had a bunch of injury concerns heading into the year, and they won today. So I just think it's a way for people to try to explain what happens. I'm not necessarily saying that it's right or wrong, but to me, you got to go out there and make plays and execute. Like, you have so much practice time going back to the spring, all throughout the summer, to prepare and be ready to go week one. And Dave Canales looked at what he did last year, and he recognized, I need to change things up. And he had the starters play 2 series against Cleveland in week 1, 2 series in week 2 against Houston, and they also had joint practices. And I think a big thing about that, because they talk about they get a lot of work out of that, fans aren't there to see it. So for them, they're not able to tangibly understand what has the work that they got in, what maybe has been improved upon. They only get to see glimpses of what they do in the preseason, so that then makes them think that, okay, they didn't get any work done at all. Well, that's just not the truth at all. This team just has to do a better job of executing. I don't know what the disconnect is between all the positive things that Dave Canales said about the work that they got done to them getting out there in week 1 and certainly not looking prepared against another team in Jacksonville that wasn't a good football team last year, just like you. Couldn't stop anybody defensively, had problems offensively, questioned about their quarterback, and they looked competent today while you didn't. So I don't think it's the preseason. I just think that whatever the preparation aside from that they're doing is just not working. And I'm going to tell people too, as long as they have 2 joint practices, I just don't imagine they're going to ever have a day where Dave Canales here in Carolina is going to play the starters an extended amount of time in the preseason. And if someone gets hurt, like Cam Newton back in 2019, are people going to be complaining about them playing the preseason? Or are they going to be like, oh, well, you got one of our top players hurt? Because you can't have it both ways. That's the only thing I'm going to say.
There is no winning. But
unless you win in week 1, then people won't complain.
Unless you're a part of that 50% of the NFL who does win in week 1. Julian, I want to challenge you. If you are Dave Canales or any of the Panthers players, as you're flying back from Jacksonville right now, what is the one emotion or word that is sticking in your head as you're getting ready for another week in the NFL?
I mean, the emotion is just, we're moving forward. You have 16 more games, 17 more weeks left in the regular season. There is plenty of time to fix what happened today. And I think they're a much better football team than what they showed. And I know no one wants to hear that. No one wants to hear it's just week 1. They can come back next week, and they got to go on the road against Arizona, a franchise that they have dominated in recent years, but it's a different season, different team, all of that. But you got to move forward. You can't look at what happened today and think, oh, well, that's it. We're not going to be any good this season. I think they get back to work obviously on Monday with film review, and they'll have Tuesday off. They'll be right back out there in the practice field on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I think this team will be ready to go next Sunday against Arizona. If they're not, they're 0-2 again, then it's the same kind of process. You got to take it week to week. I know it's very difficult for fans to think about that just because of what, of course, has gone on in recent years, but it's a week-to-week league. Your team can look terrible one week. You looked at last year against Dallas. Looked like they couldn't protect Bryce Young. The next week, won in overtime against Arizona. You have those weeks against Kansas City, against Philadelphia, and then you have that Dallas game and Tampa game. So it's a week-to-week league. It changes every single week. They just got to get back to their process, be able to get healthy, and actually execute. And I think that they'll show far better than what we saw today.
All right, yeah, so we will see what week 2 brings for the Carolina Panthers, as you mentioned, facing Arizona before they come back for their home opener in just a couple weeks at this point against Atlanta. So Julian Council with Locked On Panthers. Thanks for watching.
All right, we'll see. I try to remain optimistic as a Panthers fan, but the week one that was tough to watch. However, some good news. Nick Carboni is talking all things Panthers, including recapping week 1. He was actually in Jacksonville covering the game. He'll be on tonight at 9 p.m. here on WCNC Plus. You don't want to miss it. Great conversation. Then later in the week, as we get closer to game day, Thursday, Eugene Robinson and I are breaking down what the Panthers need to do to get the first win of the season. And also we'll do a little bit of recapping and a lot of energy on Thursday as we head into the Panthers' next game against the Arizona Cardinals, which is another away game. All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. James is here filling in for Carlene. All right, so let's get to some of our top headlines on today. So the first headline that actually just came into our newsroom just moments ago. So we got this in. So attorneys for a man at the center of a Jacksonville traffic stop that went viral after posting a video of himself being punched in the face by Jacksonville Sheriff's Office police officers in February have formally asked the U.S. Department of Justice to investigate the case, according to a letter shared by civil rights attorney Ben Crump's office. Again, William McNeil Jr., who you see there in the red shirt, says he was assaulted and who was assaulted by Jacksonville police in that viral video, announcing a lawsuit. McNeil A student of Livingstone College in Salisbury recorded the encounter with Jacksonville police officers in February during a traffic stop. And here's some of that video from that traffic stop, again, that went viral. Again, he and his attorneys announcing a lawsuit against the department. All right, so our next headline is a story that we continue to follow regarding Irina Zarutska. That is the young woman who was stabbed multiple times on the light rail, the blue line, on August 22nd. That video, surveillance video, was released on Friday, and it has spread throughout social media. And there has been a level of public outcry. So President Trump, at an event today, addressing the situation, talking about, do we have sound from that? Okay, let's play what President Trump had to say today.
We're all people of religion, but there are evil people, and we have to confront that. I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning or last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. It's not really watchable because it's so horrible.
All right, so that was President Trump reacting to that. We'll have more during our evening newscasts 4, 5, and 6 from Jesse Pierre, Bria Smith, who are following up on the latest on that stabbing on the light rail last month. All right, so let's go out to another story, this time in Minneapolis, northeast Minneapolis. Take a look at this. This is damage. This is aftermath after a massive fire tore through at least 3 commercial buildings in northeast Minneapolis early Sunday morning. Now, according to Minneapolis Fire Department, firefighters were called to the 1500 block of Central Avenue Northeast at around 4 a.m. and found a 3-story commercial building on fire. Again, as you can see there, a lot of damage, a lot of destruction there from those flames, and that's just the aftermath. And again, that is in northeast Minneapolis. No injuries have been reported at this time. We will continue to update you on the story as more information comes in out of that area. All right, so last week we had Megan Bragg on to talk about, and she's here in studio. I usually kind of have a better setup to this, but here we go. She's here in studio, but we had her in studio multiple times last week because we were talking about COVID vaccines and from guidelines to prescriptions. Hey guys, don't forget flu is out there on top of that. So just another layer of, concerns.
I know.
Yeah.
Obviously, I feel like I'm on the health beat right now because we're doing so much on it, but it's because this is going around right now. People are feeling this start to fall. Kids back in school. Those germs are going everywhere.
Everywhere. Germs galore.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So we are getting a lot of questions about this. So we're kind of asking a bunch of things, but I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay, ask me a question.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a patient. Okay, this patient has a fever.
Okay.
They're coughing, sneezing. They have a sore throat and running nose and a very big headache. Do they have the flu or do they have COVID?
COVID.
How do you know? Why do you say that?
That was a guess.
That was a
I'm
guess,
not going to
right?
lie to you. I was a guess.
No. And I set you up for that, Nick, because it's hard to tell because flu and COVID are very similar in their symptoms, right? You are feeling yucky, you have those body aches, the whole thing. So this is why it's important to test, right? To see if you have one or the other, because there are medications that can help you with either one. You just need to know what you have.
That was a good one, man. You've been working on that one. You've been working on that one.
I was working on that.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is why it's important to test if you want to see which one you have to get on the right medications and to, do the right procedure that fits for you for either of these. The good thing is that there are flu and COVID tests that are combined. And so you can get those. And they range from anywhere from $9 to $40. I saw $126. That's like a super duper rapid test. So it just depends on what kind you want. But there are several questions within this, and we're going to get to them. But I just wanted to also show you this. I did send a graph to James so we can look at this, because this might be going around a lot more. A lot of people are getting not as vaccinated as they used to. At the very bottom, that is the 2024-2025 amount of people getting vaccinated for the flu. So you can see how it's declined so much over the past year, over the few years. I think it's 2020, it goes through 2020. So it's just consistently, people have just not gotten as vaccinated for the flu. And so that's really important, and why, you know, yeah, exactly, those numbers. Definitely have gone down a lot. Now, this is from the CDC, so that's a graph from them. And some questions that people do have for us is, will it still test the same variant of the flu? Meaning, like, if you get this flu test, is it going to work for this flu this time around? And the answer to that is yes, because the test isn't necessarily looking for the variant, it's looking for the protein, and it's the fundamental markers of the flu. So that's what it's looking at, and basically it's these proteins that make up basically the antigens. So you're able to know which flu you have, what if it's the flu or not. Now, it can't test flu, influenza A or B, but it can tell you have the flu. So same thing goes for COVID too.
I'm over here.
I know.
On CVS's website right now, so I can get my flu shot.
Your flu shot, yeah.
And I guess my excuse, it feels like it kind of creeped up. We had like such a hot summer, and it feels like summer just kind of stretched out. And it's like you look up, it's like, oh my goodness, it's September, like.
Right.
We're approaching mid-September right now.
Exactly. And you know what? Some people don't do well with the flu vaccine. Like, you know, I mean, meaning
the symptoms.
And they don't want to do it, and totally understandable. But the flu is awful as well. So it's gonna one or the other. So that is what's going on as far as flu tests go. There's still a lot around there. I went on Amazon, I went on CVS, I went on Walgreens to see if they were available. They are available, and you can buy that flu and COVID test. It's just good to have them in your possession.
Especially if the kid jams. So
I mean,
oh man, don't get me started.
Right, it's a lot.
Back to school is a lot.
Back to school is a lot. I know a lot. Like I said, I know a lot of people who have that, who had it. And I had a COVID test a while that I was giving, and it was able to show the line right away. So I mean, it's you know, these tests now. So you know, they're not. If you do have questions about the test, there can be negative tests, like yada, all that stuff. But just letting people know that, you know, it does work for this flu season, these tests, and you can get a combined flu COVID testing, so you can see for both, because like you guessed, you didn't know what the patient had.
I didn't know. I'm sorry.
Because it's hard to tell, Nick. No, you can't. You can't know if you don't test, right?
I feel like I should have known that answer, but like you said,
you can't. I mean, there's no.
I beat myself up for 2 seconds.
I know. Don't beat yourself up.
And now I'm back to reality.
Okay. Yeah.
Meg, where can folks catch your story tonight?
5:15. I checked just for you, so you wouldn't have to check.
I always
yourself.
ask that question. I have to make sure.
And 5:15 we will be on, and that's about it.
Megan Bragg, thank you. Congrats again. Your Bills won. Your Bills won.
I mean, we can stay in here for an hour and talk about that Buffalo Bills game.
We cannot stay here for an hour and talk about the Bills game. But I just said congrats.
I know. Well, thank you. I'm very happy. I was a very happy girl this morning.
A win for the Bills is a win for the Panthers.
That's right. Go Panthers. I love the Panthers too. Go Panthers.
Yeah. All right. That's Megan Bragg here talking all things flu. Seriously, important information about the flu. And again, is the article on our digital platforms right now? Usually have it up.
I'm writing it right now.
Okay, so it'll be up shortly, and you can catch our story at what time again, Meg?
5:15.
All right, that was a test. She passed. All right, Megan Bragg here, verifying everything you need to know about the flu. All right, let's switch gears now. Let's take a break. We'll be back in 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertivant. So we want to get now to Cleveland, Ohio, where happening right now, the Cleveland Division of Police holding a briefing on the latest on the Flats East Bank shooting Sunday evening that sent 5 people to the hospital. Again, that press conference, it's still happening, but we wanted to start it from the beginning so you don't miss anything here on Live Impact News. Let's take it to you now.
Good afternoon, everyone. So today we're here to provide an update about the incident that happened down here in the Flats with the individuals being shot. So yesterday evening, around 6:20 p.m., the Division of Police was notified of shots fired in the area of 1051 West 10th. Reports of individuals being shot came shortly after. Preliminary information we can share at this time is that there was an issue with overcrowding at the play bar inside and out. The fire marshal was notified and responded with other members of the Division of Fire. Upon their arrival, they pushed the crowd outside when shortly after an altercation took place. A short time after, gunshots rang out and the crowd began running. Within a minute of being dispatched, Division of Police personnel assigned to the Brown Special Event Detail responded to the area. Most of them had been dealing with large crowds in the warehouse district area. Fire and police rendered aid to 5 individuals on scene. The victims were then transported to area hospitals by EMS. A 6th victim was transported by private auto to an area hospital. Crime scene detectives processed the scene and discovered approximately 40 shell casings from 4 different caliber weapons in the immediate area that was surrounding 1051 West 10th. Detectives responded to the area to...
Here's why I love boarding my dog with Rover when I travel. My dog gets to stay overnight in a sitter's home and receives personalized, loving care. I get to choose a sitter and
who sustained a gunshot wound to the foot, a 45-year-old male with a gunshot wound to the knee, a 22-year-old male with a gunshot wound to the thigh, an 18-year-old female with a gunshot wound to the abdomen, a 16-year-old male with a gunshot wound to the front teeth, and a 21-year-old male with multiple gunshot wounds including the abdomen, hand, hip, and thigh, who is also currently under arrest for his involvement with the shooting. Additionally, there were several vehicles that were struck by gunfire, some of which were occupied at the time. We are thankful that there were not more victims as a result of this shooting, especially with the occupied vehicles that were struck. Detectives are still following up on leads provided by callers, surveillance videos, and witnesses in the area. This is still an active investigation. We are asking anyone who has any additional information about the shooting or suspects involved to contact our 3rd District Detective Bureau at 216-623-5318. So at this time, if you have additional questions we can answer, we'll take those questions.
Do you expect to make more arrests?
Absolutely. So we have additional leads we're currently following up on and potentially another suspect at this time.
What charges will the person who was arrested be facing?
At this time, they haven't been charged, so we'll get that information. But of course, it's going to be probably connected with the felonious assault shooting.
Chief, can you pinpoint where exactly this started, the shooting that is? We've seen surveillance footage that shows it may have been right here between this business and the business that was boarded up.
So at this time, it's still an active investigation, but we do have 4 locations that are surrounding this immediate area that were, there was shell casings that were discovered.
Can you confirm how many shooters? Because we've also heard that there were multiple.
At this time, we don't know for sure, but given the fact that there are 4 different caliber weapons, we're assuming that there's 4 shooters involved.
How concerning is this to you?
It's very concerning. There was probably 100,000 people downtown yesterday for the Browns game. You know, thank goodness it didn't end more tragically than it already has. We still have 5 individuals who are in the hospital and 1 suspect who's being treated. So it's very concerning for, the city, for the division, for the mayor that this happened.
Do you think that the response to board up that business was appropriate? Because they're saying they're not at fault for this situation that unfolded.
I will let the law director speak a little bit more on the board up. If you want to.
Where do you believe the actual shootings occurred? Is it all between West 11th and the bridge? Is it on the other side of the bridge?
So if you look at the center of it, where it occurred is 1051 West 10. And from what we captured so far, it's the area surrounding all of that. From the surveillance video, what we see, if you look at the crowds were all on that corner there. The rest of the flats area had moderate to low pedestrian traffic. The high concentration of pedestrians was in that particular area.
What led to the actual shooting? Other than, I know you said the bar was crowded and then there was a shooting.
We're still trying to determine that at this time.
Do you know if the people involved in the shooting were inside the bar before it happened?
That's still part of the active investigation.
Chief, the owner of Play Bar and Grill told me earlier today that he said none of the people involved in the shooting were in their bar. He also told me that they had nothing to do with it. What makes you think that they were involved?
Well, I'm not going to give further details about the investigation, but everything will come out, and as that comes forward, we'll provide additional information.
I mean, were the suspects in the bar beforehand, or were they just kind of
I will get that information to you as we have more information.
Do you have an update on how the victims are doing? What's the latest on their conditions?
So we know that 2 of the victims were in more serious condition, so they are all currently remain hospitalized. Thank you.
Can you get on mic?
Yep. Sure. I was going to step over and let the law department speak further, so just give me 1 second.
Yeah, sure. And can you repeat your question?
First, just identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Mark Griffin. I'm law director for the city of Cleveland. I think your question was it appropriate?
Yeah.
So safety comes first. We as a city are going to be assertive and aggressive in protecting the safety of all of our citizens. So yes, I do think it was appropriate. This is a emergency order for a closure, and the bar will have an opportunity to appeal that, and they will get their due process.
Okay, and so is there a history there that's led to this decision as the train comes by? Is that the reason why? Because simply being over capacity can't be a reason to board up a business.
Well, there has been a history of prior incidents, including a prior shooting. This should look that way. Okay, sorry.
Should be okay.
Okay. So yes, there has been a prior history, but more importantly, when 6 people get shot, we're going to do everything we can to protect public safety. So yes, I think it was appropriate, and it is, I think, appropriately calibrated to really the seriousness of the danger.
Are they facing any citations for being over capacity during this event? Like, what else is a penalty?
So they are facing other citations, but I'm not going to disclose today what those will be, but you're going to see them fairly soon.
Did the management there request to be shut down because of overcrowding?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Did the management of that bar request to be shut down because of overcrowding?
No, they did not. They requested assistance, but they didn't request to be shut down.
How long will it be shut down for? I know you said that they can appeal that, but how long is that process?
It depends. It depends what the investigation reveals, and it'll be decided when all the information is in.
Is it possible that they may be shut down for good, or is there a chance of them reopening?
I don't want to speculate, so I'll just leave it at that.
The management partner says that this was racially motivated. How would you respond to that?
Wayne Drummond, Director of Public Safety. Race has nothing to do with this. It's all about safety. Our response from the Law Department, Division of Police, is all about safety, and that's why we acted the way we did.
Can you talk a bit about response time? The security said that it took about 8 minutes. I know a lot of PD were already assigned to the special event. How long was response time?
So within the officers arrived within a minute of receiving the radio broadcast, and I think there was about 3 minutes before it was broadcast. So between the time of the call for service to them getting here was 3 to 4 minutes.
What about the call for crowd control? Was that before the shots fired call?
So I know that fire personnel responded down and were on scene when the shooting actually occurred. So they were already down here for that.
Some people we talked to today have criticized what they see as a lack of police presence in the flats, especially 4 o'clock-ish following the game.
So I can tell you that the officers were dealing with the out of the Browns game. They were directing traffic, the large crowds, and we also had some issues in the warehouse district where they were up there dealing with large crowds in the warehouse district. So a lot of our resources were spread out throughout the city, but we had a high concentration of officers in the warehouse district at that time for another incident that had just occurred.
Did you have enough officers on duty in this area at that time?
Each event we reevaluate our staffing. You know, it's hard to say. Yesterday the weather was beautiful, you know, but when you bring large crowds and alcohol driven, you know, we have to really be careful with our staffing and make sure that we have the appropriate amount of officers. So again, we will continue to reevaluate. We've staffed this as we have in the past, and you know, sometimes we have absolutely no issues, but I can tell you that the feedback I had from the officers that the crowds that weren't going to the game were extremely large and more than they've ever seen before.
With that in mind, do you plan to staff up next month?
Absolutely. We reevaluate this after every single event.
The warehouse district, what kind of incident was that?
There were a lot of people that were hanging, that were not of age to go inside the bars, that were hanging out outside. We had hundreds outside of each establishment. We had a felonious assault that occurred up there where a female was beaten up in that area, and they made several arrests. And the officers were issuing multiple citations for open container. Open container. There's a lot of open drinking that was going on that they were trying to address. The biggest thing we worry about is anything that causes the potential for public safety. We know that the high concentration of what happened was around this establishment. So the decision was made to close down the bar to reevaluate public safety.
Based on what you've seen, do you believe shots were being fired from vehicles or from people who were outside of vehicles?
I don't have any information that any of the shooters were inside of a vehicle. I can say that. I believe that they were all on foot.
What about the people that were injured? Were they all on foot as well?
Yes.
So none of them were in vehicles?
No.
Do you have any idea of the 6 who were shot, minus the one who's a suspect, how many of those people may have been innocent bystanders?
At this time, I don't have that information. Until we continue with our reviews, then I should have more additional information for you.
Could you talk about the plan moving forward, please? This is the first Browns game of the year. I mean, obviously there's going to be lots and lots of people frequenting this area, other areas across the city. They're probably worried that this could happen at any time. What's the plan?
I can tell you public safety is always our priority. We want people to come down and enjoy these games and not have to worry about these type of incidents. And, you know, if it takes a closure of a bar or something else that helps establish that, then the city's going to do what it needs to do. But our ultimate goal is public safety, and, you know, reevaluating our plans, making sure that we have our staff appropriately in each location. You know, if you look at it, a lot of our the visitors were up outside of the flats, you know, and that's where the officers were concentrated the heaviest. But we reevaluate, we move, and this is going to be another reevaluation.
Go ahead. I saw a drone take off here earlier today at about 12:45. Obviously, you got cars walking through here, reporters, bar employees. Crime scene tape's gone. The shell casings are gone. What evidence did you hope to find using a drone?
So I can tell you that it got dark quick. So we always come back the next day to reevaluate to see if there's something you missed. Is there a firearm that was dropped? Is there something that is at risk for the public to be locating? So we had the officers out here, again, canvassing the area for any firearms that might have been dropped.
I mean, if you were worried that...
Welcome to the greatest show on earth.
Again, it's just taking another set of eyes to look at it. The officers canvassed the area. They were out here till after midnight last night, you know, looking and seeing everything, but we always take another look. You know, it's just, you don't know if you missed something, so it's just doing our due diligence.
Behind me, there's a shattered window. Came out here, there was a part of a shell casing sitting on this manhole. What did this scene look like at 6:15, 6:20 yesterday afternoon?
It was chaotic. You know, the whole scene was a mess. There was people, you know, that were shaken up, and there was trying to process what had just happened. People are just trying to go home, enjoy the beautiful weather after the Browns game. So it's a lot of confusion, and there was a lot of chaos.
One more question. One more question.
How did you make the decision what was best was to shut down the bar so quickly?
Yeah. So the answer is it was decided based upon the need for safety and protecting the public.
Mark, tell us about this emergency order for closure. What is this? Is this a mandate from the mayor's office? Is this a court document? Does a judge sign off on this?
Yeah, last one. So as an emergency order, it can be issued by any officer of the city of Cleveland. And so we did that collectively to protect the safety. And again, there will be an opportunity for them to ask for a review.
Why should people
Thanks,
feel safe?
Any other questions, guys? Just send them to the police PIO email.
Just one
Thanks.
more.
No,
Why should people feel safe coming to the class?
There's 2 more already in.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, we want to step aside from that press conference there in Cleveland, Ohio that just wrapped up with police. Let's take a break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. We'll be back again in just 2 minutes. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. All right, so we want to go to something live. Let's head over to this happening right now. What is it still going on?
All
right, so this is just to kind of give you some context. House Rules Committee is holding a special meeting on the Stop Illegal Entry Act. Again, let's take a listen in.
They're going to recess, Nick.
They're going to recess? Okay. Well, they are going to recess on that. Let's check in with our forecast. We haven't done that in a while. Beautiful day outside, fall-like temperatures, PSL weather, if you believe in that, if you like PSL. Do you like PSLs, James?
I'm more of like an apple cider.
Yeah,
apple
me too.
Chai kind of guy.
Yeah, same. So I guess no PSLs for the studio. Let's check in with Majestic Store with our full forecast.
Well, good Monday afternoon to you. I'm WCNC meteorologist Majestic Storm. I hope you had a fantastic weekend. We started out the weekend feeling very summer-like, and then we were able to wrap it up feeling very much like fall. Boy, it felt nice this morning, and it's feeling really nice this afternoon as well. Whole lot of sunshine. Temperatures today will only rise really into the 70s, mid-70s today, but it's not just that drop in temperatures, but really it's that big drop in humidity that's making it feel so really nice nice and comfortable to be outside in. By tomorrow morning, mid-50s, that's what we're waking up to, another 70-degree day, and then mid to upper 80s as we're heading towards the middle to end of our work week. Now, there is one catch in our forecast, and that's going to be the breezy winds. You'll notice them here and there. They're going to be moving in from the north and the east. Some of those winds today gusting 25 to 30 miles an hour. So maybe you're going for a bike ride today. Maybe you're heading out to the golf course. You will notice those winds at times. They'll eventually die down, I'd say around dinner time and then afterwards. Throughout the day today, though, a whole lot of sunshine to get outside and enjoy. Oftentimes just a nice way to start out the new work week with all of that sunshine. Mid-70s, hardly any humidity. It's going to be so nice if you want to work out in the yard or maybe walk your dog later on tonight after dinner. If you're out in the mountains, lucky you. Not only is it gorgeous, but look at how cool it is today. Mid-60s out in Boone, 64 in Blowing Rock, up towards Fleetwood, also checking into those mid-60s. If you're in the foothills today, warming up just a little, but still very nice. 74 in Morganton, 73 in Lenore, and as we're bringing it back home to the Queen City, not even touching 80 degrees today. 78 in Lincolnton and 78 for Concord and Rock Hill. Lancaster over towards Chesterfield, also topping off into those mid-70s. Again, that drop in temperature definitely feels nice, but that drop in humidity is what makes the air feel a little more crisp. Now, when we're in the middle of summertime, we oftentimes see our dew points into the 60s and 70s. Right now, it's going to be into the 40s and 50s. That means we have a lot of dry air that was pulled in from the north back behind a couple cold fronts that we had, especially as we started to feel those impacts on Sunday. High temperatures over the next 10 days, they look a little like this. Upper 70s today, tomorrow, and to our Wednesday. By the end of our work week, we'll start to see those temperatures climb just a bit, and we'll be back into the 80s, but still right around where we should be for this time of the year. Now look at these overnight lows. Are you ready for this cool air? This is a type of weather where, yeah, it feels nice to open up your windows to let in this cool air because, for one, it's refreshing, but also we don't have any humidity out there. Look at Boone, 39 for your low tonight, 49 in Morganton. That cool air will help to wake you right up tomorrow morning, and you can see those lows hold steady mainly into the 50s and 60s. Rain chances, we don't have any today, tomorrow, straight into Wednesday. We're staying very, very dry. Really, it's going to be all about the sunshine. Futurecast, as you're picking up those kids after school today, be a great day to go do something fun with them outside because it's going to feel very enjoyable, I think, for just about everyone. Rain chances really will be at 0 today throughout most of our work week and into the weekend. So if you have a garden, if you have flowers, maybe just a lawn that you're trying to keep green still, make sure you're watering it. We don't have a lot of rain in that 7-day forecast, but we do have sunny skies, 70s for our highs, and 50s for our lows. Hope you have a great week.
All right, so that's a look at your full forecast. That's what happens when you get to the top of the hour. Words start coming out weird. All right, so let's take a break. We'll be back in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Again, we'll be back in just 2 minutes.
All right, guys. Hey, we're back here on WCNC Plus. I'm Colin Mayfield here for the next hour in the Impact Studio. We've got some good news to give to you here in the next hour or so. So we appreciate your time. We actually have our investigative reporter, Nate Morabito, who's done some digging. And Nate, as you know, we're in this coverage of Helene during this month. Things will really ramp up as we get closer to the anniversary in the next 2 weeks here. But I know you've done some digging, especially on the FEMA side of things. And just because you've sent me some of the stuff that you've worked on, it is interesting to see the damage still. I went up to Boone maybe a week ago and still see the damage in certain areas. The banks, one area up here, and I saw there was a number of about 10 to 12 homes. And in one area, they were still disconnected from the main road because the bridge was washed out. Now, they had another way to go, but other folks had built just like a makeshift driveway to other properties to get around this driveway. So it's interesting, we're nearing a year and there's so much still to be done, kind of reminiscent of what I saw when Katrina happened. And that was a totally different devastation and totally different situation. But I know you've been digging in. Set the preface for us here, what you actually were looking at. And I know individuals, in Western North Carolina, we've been reporting, have been waiting on this money. So let's talk about, what you've been digging into.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about FEMA, we're talking about federal government money as well. But what you just described, Colin, it's wild to me because I went to Buncombe County a few weeks ago and visited a community in the same situation. And in fact, I don't know if we can just pull the sound up real quick, but from Michelle Pentecost, this is a woman who lives up in Buncombe County, and for the better part of almost a year, they have essentially been having to drive over this bridge that is not meant for heavy traffic. It's on a neighbor's property, and they're having to cut through several other neighbors' properties to even get to their side of the creek. And the way you put it too is amazing, because I went up there and you see these properties and a hurricane came through, floodwaters, a landslide came through there. But what you also don't fully get is the way the land used to look, just the undulation in the land, how it shifted it, the way the creek used to be. It's now much wider. What property used to be there before, and so it's kind of like you almost expect from the outside looking in it to be some black and white picture of what devastation's supposed to look like. And what I found is you have to spend time up there, you have to understand the nuances of everybody's problem, and the people that we talk to thankfully are survivors, and they're grateful to be alive, but they still have massive needs. And so take a listen. Michelle says it perfectly here, sums up what I'm trying to say, I think.
It's hard, I've sent a lot of friends and family pictures and videos and stuff, and then have had some of them come out here, like my mom and my brother were just up here, and still just cannot even believe it, like compared to the pictures, like you can't put it in a picture, you can't put it in a video, unless you come and see it firsthand. Yeah, you can't describe it.
All right, so it takes seeing it firsthand and also understanding how much these different governments have asked for, right? So we know the state of North Carolina has estimated the damages and the needs to around $60 billion. And we wanted to get an understanding of, well, how much has the state actually received from the federal government? And it's kind of hard to get an exact number because you have individual assistance going out from FEMA. You have money going directly from agencies that are helping people, and then you have money that's going through the state's administering it, and it's somewhere around like $4.7 billion.
Yeah.
They have requested, the governor's requested about $19 billion. So do the math, almost $5 billion out of $19 billion that they've requested. Mm-hmm. And then there's another, $40 billion plus of need that will be helped by the insurance companies, but also the state's thrown some money in, $2.9 billion. And I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there, but the bottom line is we're not even close to where the need is still today. We're almost a year out, and we still don't have the exact amount of money, not even close to it, that the federal government has given.
Right. Well, and let's, I was discussing with the president of the Chamber of Commerce in Boone, David Jackson, and he was really open about how having those individuals, especially FEMA, but other federal agencies on the ground, when they were on the ground, was so incredibly helpful because these individuals, in Appalachia, they build a rapport with individuals. It doesn't happen overnight, right? It's days, it's weeks, and so these individuals, right, who would come from around Boone to bring them their most, these documents that are so treasured in their hearts, that have some stuff that really opens up everything in their closet, right? They had to bring these documents to get individuals to have insurance claims, all of these things. So it was interesting to hear from him, obviously the steps and the process by which they had to find these amounts of money. It wasn't just a buffet of grants where you just, okay, that looks good to me. He was telling me that they literally had to do the groundwork on the ground to ask the state office to see what they could apply for. There was no precedent for this, and I guess they were shocked by after Katrina, after some of Milton, after all of these hurricanes that we've seen that have devastated certain areas, not necessarily the mountains, that there's been no precedent set in the federal government for step-by-step plans for this. And he thought it was a little bit crazy as well that FEMA kind of, in his eyes, was the agency that was the subject matter experts on everything instead of going to the subject matter experts, which they're not necessarily equipped to be, and they've said that before, right? So it's interesting because now I think he wants to spearhead this council of individuals from the area. They've already helped individuals that have been hurt by Chantal. So the Raleigh area, Durham, they've worked with those individuals already here's what we've done. Here are these steps. And I think it's fascinating to see that this region has already started that. And I think there's a office that's attached to the governor's office called NC Help or NC Works, and they've created this. And David was telling me that that's been their lifeline. That's literally been right next to the governor's desk that they can call. So there's been interesting things that have been popped up, and obviously I'll have more for you as we go through this. But it's the similarities, because I'm hearing officials say the same things that actual residents are saying too.
Well, and here's the thing too, if I can point this out. We talked to different people up in Buncombe County, and in one case, we talked to a couple who moved here about a decade ago. They wanted to farm. They wanted to live off their homestead, essentially. Mm-hmm. And, this flood comes through, wipes away everything they put their money into, right? And they can get the maximum for their home repairs, which is somewhere around $40,000 plus. And she goes to me, that doesn't even cover appliances. Like, number one, I can't even do that. Yeah. Then you have like $3,000 for personal losses. And she started kind of getting in tears about the fact that if it weren't for volunteers, they would be in no position where they're at today. Yep. And no one is sitting there. Right? Yeah, the nonprofits, the volunteers from all over the country, and I think these people up there, that I talk to, they're not asking for to sit back and let the help come in. They are putting the work in. They're working long days.
Right. They want to know where they can go to do the work.
Yes, they want to do the work.
Well, and that's the challenge. Is a lot of folks that I've heard on the ground, I'm sure you've heard this too, is how do they go about getting to that point, though? Because, again, there's a lot of money that needs to be on the ground. And there are so many businesses right now, David was telling me in general, that didn't necessarily take any money in the inception of Helene with all those packages, but now they are needing it because all of their stores are gone. So it's again, every individual's on a different situation and has a different story, but it seems to be. And then you've got to think about soil testing, streams and banks that have moved. You've got to, and there's a lack of civil engineering, which I'm about to report on as well. So you've got all these things that have really hampered the issues on the ground. Anyway, let's talk about the federal assistance in terms of the wildfires, because right after Helene, it seemed like we had the wildfires in California. All of America's gaze shifted on that. And that's been one thing as well that I think folks have pointed out. Like, have people forgot about us here in Western North Carolina? What did folks say about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you remember, too, this happened in January, these wildfires.
Right.
And, Governor Newsom and President Trump were kind of going at it a little bit, which kind of, here people are like, well, what about us? What about us? Right. And so that was a big part of what our project we were trying to accomplish. Has it been a similar response? We're going to put our full story on tonight at 11 o'clock. But the truth is that the majority of the money requested by both of these states, California and North Carolina, is just not here. Yeah. It's taking much longer than people would like it to. Yeah. And I know here in North Carolina, they're working with their congressional delegation to get things moved along. But $6 billion, out of California's money they've received. And this is going to funnel through some, federal governments. The governor there asked for an extra $40 billion, so almost twice as much as North Carolina asked for.
Okay.
And they've received $6 billion, which of course is more than we've received. But
Right.
when you look at percentages, it's actually less.
Yeah.
So I think that FEMA has made it clear from the start we have enough money to go around. At least we have the resources to work on multiple disasters at the same time, and then more disasters continue to happen. We know about Texas as well. So I think that this is a good opportunity for people in this state, whether you live in Western North Carolina or not, to contact your member of Congress.
Yep.
No matter what side of the aisle you are on, this is a bipartisan issue. We want people to recover. We those of us that really work hard for a living, we can put ourselves in their position.
Yeah.
They work really hard to build what they have. They have a lot of treasures passed down over generations,
Right.
including their land.
Right.
All of which is destroyed, and they are begging for some assistance. And I think this is a good opportunity for people to say, hey, I'm going to call or email my member of Congress and just say, where did the funding efforts stand with this? Because we need more money. You can do that with your state lawmakers too, but in reality, the state's given almost as much as the federal government has at this point. That's wild to think. And I think too, no one is saying that these nonprofits haven't made a big difference too. This is in addition to that. And we were up there talking to Michelle, who you heard from, and we were talking about the bridge, you and I, Colin, too. There they did get money from FEMA, something like $11,000 to $12,000 per household to pool money together to fix their bridge. They also need a good-sized donation to finish this bridge, and the creek is much larger than it used to be. The bridge construction hasn't even started. In fact, just a couple weeks ago, they got the rest of the bridge out of the creek. Think about how long that's taken,
Right.
and how much debris is taken. The other family we talked about, they had like 100 trees that were down from this. There was a landslide, a mountainside kind of came through their properties. And so I just think that it's a good reminder for folks to say to their member of Congress in Washington, D.C., hey, we still have needs here in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Where does that stand? And I want to point this out too, Colin. It is unclear how much money North Carolina is going to get. There's
Right.
no guarantee they're going to get what they asked for.
Yeah.
In fact, it seems unlikely that they will get that full amount.
Right.
And that is just a fraction of how much is needed.
Well, and that's what I asked David about as well, is why does it take so long? Why? And he said to me in no uncertain terms, it's not an electronic system where you're signing documents and they're into a system and people are scanning it. It's signing. The offices could be right next to each other, but the Department of Labor is working off the Department of Commerce. Every single thing that these individuals do in terms of this money that comes from the state, from the federal government as well, affects every single department. So it's not as simple as just drawing the funds and dispersing them, right? You have to sign a paper, then that paper goes to the next department, then that paper. And he said, and I asked him, why isn't this electronic? Why isn't this precedent set when we've seen other emergencies? Again, to my mind, I go back to Katrina because my family was impacted by that. But again, FEMA isn't an agency, as we saw, that comes in immediately and helps individuals, right? A lot of that, it looks like, is on the local governments. Whether or not they can handle that is not a debate right now for us, but that's the way it is, and that's the way Helene was in certain places. So I know that there is help coming, but there's a lot of help needed. And like I said, again, construction hasn't even started. Civil engineers, speaking specifically in Ashe County, I was up there doing a story with Lansing's Bridge to Recovery. They're a nonprofit group. They have specifically only been run on nonprofit donations, philanthropic people that have said, listen, I want to do this. That's how they're building bridges around Ashe County right now. They are not waiting on federal funds because they don't have them. And so the biggest thing that they've been doing now is reach out to UNC Charlotte. They have engineering students that are helping to build using certain materials to build bridges because cement is such at a demand right now. So there are so many issues that I think just scratch the surface of this that we really have not learned from. And I guess a lot of questions from Western North Carolina are why and when, right? So yeah, I guess a lot of discussions have to be had. And that was one thing he had to say is a lot of people have to get in the same room, emergency management officials, county management, state, and they have to ask some really hard questions in terms of how did we assess our response and really what is needed after this, right? So yeah, I don't think any one person has those answers, but it is
look back to the pandemic. That was unprecedented at that time.
Right.
Just the pandemic, right?
People were just recovering.
And we kind of open the government's pocketbooks,
Right.
and it's open for widespread fraud, which we have seen. And so there are a lot of checks and balances in place. There's a lot of red tape, and that's a problem, especially when people need help.
Yeah.
Like a year ago,
Right.
essentially. And I think that's the real challenge for people. They almost feel like they've been screaming for the help. And at times, not everyone hears them. And Michelle told me, you kind of have to be the squeaky wheel. For these government leaders, they are these people's voice. We are their voice. And their gratitude, I don't know if you experienced this, Con, but when I was up there, their gratitude of us coming up there and not forgetting them, that was explicitly told to me. Thank you for remembering us.
Yeah. It's good to hear.
The geography makes them feel remote to begin with.
Right.
Then the communication issues up there make it difficult.
Yeah.
And then the lack of funding makes it difficult.
Yeah, you spoke to something, and I escaped my mind because I'm getting old, but there was something about the funding. But yes, it is so interesting to hear these stories. So again, I think a lot has been said, and it sounds like there will be more political individuals in the area as we get closer to the anniversary to look at things. But again, I guess it just strikes me, and when you saw, I think I saw a picture from, what was the city that's close to us? Not Flat Rock, Chimney Rock. Chimney Rock. So there was a picture aerially that he was showing me, David, was of just the landscape and the stream, the bed that you can still see was washed, whether that it has mud. So there's a lot to be done. And I'm not exactly sure, right? And I think they are as well, right? When is all that stuff going to be gone? In Buncombe County alone, I travel to Asheville pretty regularly. There's a lot still to be done in terms of debris removal.
Well, and also you mentioned these creeks here. This is something I never thought about. What about the native plant life? That's obviously farther down on the list of...
Some ecologist has to come in, look at that. They have to test the soil. And that's another thing that Lansing's Bleach Recovery was telling me is they added people on their board strategically so that they could, circumvent the process. It's in a legal way, but they're having individuals that are certified, that understand the process to get these jobs and projects done quicker. I think that's something to me that's amazing, that individuals are working together to get this done. But yes, there's so much to think about. And then another last thing here is a lot of these county governments are fronting the money for this. So there's a lot of municipalities that aren't solvent right now. And that's what David was I guess the worrisome now is going into 2026. You have another election, right, based on this. He is worrying that a lot of these municipalities who have fronted this money, whether it's debris removal, whether it's giving SBA loans, that they're not going to be getting this money in time for them to need to get the money to help the individuals. So there are a lot of questions I think that need to be answered, and I don't know if those answers are going to be coming anytime soon.
Well, and then you mentioned Hurricane Katrina. We can all remember that administration's response and how it felt like forever for those people to get the help they needed.
He flew over the city, and I remember that, right? And it's noted in documentaries. And even former President Bush says, maybe it's something I should have thought more about. I don't think anyone could have fathomed how bad it was. And unless you were there, same thing as Helene. Unless you've been there, as you've said, and as Michelle pointed out, you don't know the full devastation, the grasp. We were in Valley Crucis. There's a store there, Mass General store. They had 4 to 5 feet of water. It got into the store, and it literally moved a church there that's been there since the 1850s. It's tough to put in words unless you saw it. Even driving along I-40 now, it's still just my jaw drops to see the cavern that was created by water. There's nothing more powerful, in my opinion, other than fire, maybe. Water is just something that's a destructive force, and you can't get around it. So,
well, we went up to in Old Fort. We went to a FEMA trailer park there.
Yeah.
You remember we've reported in the past about FEMA trailers, and we're still working on some additional reporting on that. But talked to a man who was, living in a campground temporarily. He'd gone through a divorce.
Right.
He was living in a camper, and thank goodness he left. He showed me a picture of the camper after the fact. He would have been dead.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. But in the meantime, he's living in a FEMA trailer.
Right.
And he's got to figure out that's only a temporary solution.
Right.
Thank goodness there's a safety net
Yeah.
there. But now what? Now what do I do?
Well, speaking of, somebody said to me, I remember for Katrina, people were still living in FEMA trailers 10 years later. And actually, people are still living in FEMA trailers to this day.
And if you
it's been
look at
20
other
years.
parts of North Carolina, after past storms, trying to rebuild homes has taken forever. And there's been a lot of issues with the bureaucracy here in North Carolina relating to rebuild NC. So the track record isn't great.
Right. This isn't the dump on the federal government.
Not
it's
at all.
just
or the state.
Right. It's just looking at, as you say, the track record. And again, individuals are just worried about what they see. There seems to be, in David's words, no urgency. And that's one thing that folks have continued to say to me is no urgency. And people's lives are at stake here, right?
Call your lawmaker. That's what I say all the time.
That's the biggest thing.
Let them know that. And you know what? Speak up for the people that are in Western North Carolina if you don't live there.
Yeah.
I've talked to so many people who live around here that go up there and help them. And they're helping them, right? So it's on everyone to say, hey, the need is still there.
Well, let's not forget, Appalachia was cut off from the world for weeks. They had no self-service. There was no email. So again, there was a lot of Western North Carolina that didn't necessarily have a way to communicate with the outside world in getting that help immediately, right? And some individuals are still trying to get, I guess, stable environment in terms of communication. So it's interesting where this goes. So,
and I also wonder too, Colin. I mean, like here in Charlotte, like Riverside Drive, Mountain Island Lake, that area got flooded bad, but we're in a city that overall wasn't devastated.
Right.
A portion had some really bad damage.
Right.
Devastation. There was a death here, but it wasn't a remote section.
We didn't get a federal declaration.
Right. Widespread. There was portions of federal declaration, but it wasn't widespread.
Right.
And so those people, there was the county here, I thought moved fairly quickly in trying to figure out, okay, are we going to try to buy some more property to clear up the flooding there?
Yeah.
You've got people that live all over the place in remote sections that are already cut off from the rest of us, and it's really difficult, I think, to get the message across.
Yeah.
And especially after the storm happens 6 months later, thankfully we're all up there a lot lately. You have to continue showing the progress and what's inhibiting the progress so the rest of the world can see it, because there's so many other national problems and disasters that are all equally terrible, and everybody needs to kind of get out there, bullhorn and say, hey, we need the help too. Don't forget about us, because again, most of the money requested has not been received.
Yeah, and as we said, there's a lot of people that need it. A lot of businesses, I think, that are going to actually need some type of assistance at some point. And I did want to point out, we think about the pandemic being so long ago, but in David's words, a lot of those restaurants, those small businesses in and around Western North Carolina were just getting back on their feet. And honestly, they were just using some of the COVID funds that they had been allotted. So then you think about, you take away 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 biggest months for them with literally no way to make that money. I don't know how you recover from that, right?
I mean, right now, too, you have to think about this is going to be peak fall season, right, coming up here.
Right.
So hopefully...
And they missed out on this last year.
They missed a whole season.
And that's their biggest year.
Yeah.
So, the apple picking, there weren't no apples to pick last year. Christmas trees, right? People love to get Christmas trees. So it'll be interesting. Was there anything else that I think, I don't want to draw this conversation up. I think we've had some good things that have been pointed out here.
Well, I want to point out that, this couple that we interviewed, Jennifer B. Tesh and her husband, Joe, basically told me that this was the same response to them through multiple administrations. They said it felt the same through the Biden administration and through the Trump administration. And I think that goes to show
that's a good bar to know,
bureaucracy
right?
issue here at play, which always is an issue when you have government.
Yep.
And it's just a reminder that there's a disconnect between the person on the ground and the person that is in Congress, that is in the White House, et cetera. There's a lot of space between those two extremes.
Yeah.
And so I think we got to find a way to get closer to the middle to make sure that there's the communication to keep it going all the way through, because that's really where it gets held up. And even the money that has been approved for North Carolina, it still has to go through additional checks and balances here in the state before it can be passed on down. So it's never going to be fast enough, and this is unprecedented, so you have to give a little bit of grace for that. But at the same time, we expect our neighbors to be taken care of in their darkest moments.
Yeah.
And these people have remarkable stories just surviving. I mean, I interviewed these sisters. I don't know if you got to see the story. I think you did. That rode a mattress down a creek to survive in their 70s, and they were down the creek for 2 days before they were found. I mean, that is incredible, and they deserve a chance to recover. I was in their trailer now that they built out of a shed. Like, volunteers helped build a shed that they're living in that looks just like a home. You wouldn't know it until you walk in and you look up the ceiling to see it's actually a shed. I mean, amazing. Thankfully, they're housed. But all these GoFundMes that you see out there, the need is just extreme. You can find it if you want to search for it.
And again, the local municipalities, they're thinking about the future because this could happen again. That's why I think there's such an urgency to have these conversations with everybody getting in the same room to discuss what that response looked like and then what other regions of North Carolina can help. Because, like, as I said, David said he wants to go to Florida to learn more about what they can do, to do better here in North Carolina in terms of response.
What about Tennessee, just over the mountain?
That too. And actually, they're working with individuals that are right there too. So it's very interesting. I mean, the economies work hand in hand. And really, it is interesting to see the plans because, as I said, they are now realizing at these local municipality levels that local government is really the first response in some ways. So to not have those civil engineers, to not have some of those professions that first responders, to not have those people to backfill and to really get the emergency response going, they've got to create more education around it. So I think some good conversations will be had.
You got to learn from everything, right?
Yeah. All right, Nate, appreciate your story. It'll be on tonight at
11.
All right, 11 o'clock tonight, guys. Stick around for that. Appreciate your time, my friend. We have just about 30 more seconds here on WCNC Plus. Don't forget, we've got our Locked On Panthers special, I do believe, on Wednesday night, Monday and Wednesdays, James. Am I right? Mondays and Thursdays. My days are slipping because we started on Sundays. So we have Panthers. All you can get sneak peek coverage of obviously their games. A tough game yesterday in Jacksonville, but we'll have more from our sports team throughout the 4, 5, and 6, and obviously tonight at 11. We will see you at the 4 o'clock news here on WCNC. We'll take a quick 2-minute break and see you on the other side. All right, everyone, welcome back here to WCNC Plus. Tonight, questions coming in across the country about a tragedy right here in our own backyard, right here in Charlotte. The deadly, unprovoked stabbing of 23-year-old Irina Zarutska, the subject of overwhelming social media outrage over the last month. But that outrage following the release of the disturbing video on September 5th. Zarutska, she fled Ukraine in 2022 with her family to escape the war in Russia. 34-year-old DeCarlos Brown, he's now facing several charges. They include first-degree murder after being accused in her death. He was also denied on bond, and he was seen in that disturbing video. Brown has a long criminal history that includes convictions for armed robbery and felony larceny. City leaders in Charlotte now facing tough questions from lawmakers across the country and the community that they serve right here at home. The president even weighing in on the issue early Monday morning.
I just give my love and hope to the family of the young woman who was stabbed this morning and last night in Charlotte by a madman, a lunatic. Just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
So tonight, we are breaking down everything that we know about this case and bringing the questions that everyone's been asking us. We've been bringing straight to our experts. We're trying to learn more about what really happened that night. So today, millions of people seeing the disturbing video, though, for the very first time. Before we share that video, we do want to let you know that it is upsetting and it is difficult to watch. It is violent. We have chosen not to air the entire video out of respect for Zarutska and, of course, her family and loved ones, her friends as well. Our next third event, though, walks us through what happened that night.
In this video, you see Zarutska getting onto the Blue Line train. And then as she sits down, you can see DeCarlos Brown behind her. He appears restless at times, shifting in his seat, but he didn't do anything to appear to alarm passengers or draw attention to himself. At some point, again, you see them, Zarutska on her phone, and so DeCarlos Brown is behind her and shifting in his seat at times as she sits in front of him there on the Blue Line. She's wearing earbuds and she's holding her phone in front of her. And then minutes later, Brown pulls out what appears to be a pocket knife. And then all of a sudden, stabs Zarutska multiple times in the neck. She collapses, stunned passengers tried to react. Brown walked to the front of the train car, removed the sweatshirt, and wrapped it around his hand before leaving the train, where police arrested him on the platform.
Just a tragic situation. In the days since that video's release, many people are wondering what's next and who is at fault for this. How can we make transit safe? That's the big question. So Nick took those questions to Dr. Matthew Robinson and many others, a professor of criminal justice at App State University, to learn more about what could be going on behind the scenes.
14 previous court cases within Mecklenburg County, and we wanted to dig more into that. So right now, Live Impact News, we have professor of criminal justice at App State University, Dr. Matthew Robinson here on the program. Dr. Robinson, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. I wish it was under better circumstances, obviously.
Yeah, I guess let's start there. The video of the attack has been all over social media this weekend. It was released on Friday, been all over social media, and a lot of questions surrounding the man in the video, DeCarlos Brown. And I read there 14 cases within Mecklenburg County, and a big question I certainly got from friends and other people: how's this possible?
That's a great question. And, you know, when these things happen, that's what we inevitably ask. When someone has a long criminal record, we think that they should be, you know, off the streets, ideally for good, if necessary. But there's lots of potential answers. We'd have to look into the case specifically to figure out what he was charged with, how the cases were disposed of. There may be cases of plea bargaining where charges were filed down. There may be cases where cases were dismissed even though he was charged. So we'd have to look at all of those facts in order to really know what was going on. But it's always really unfortunate when someone who has a long criminal record is out to harm other people.
Another question I got was, I guess, and again, it's hard to ask this question, but I have to ask it. But who is at fault? Who is to blame? Is it the justice system, or does this fall at the feet of city leaders?
Well, I wouldn't blame anyone other than the offender at this time.
Yeah.
Again, until all the facts come out. But sometimes there'll be, what we would see as, or we would view as negligence on the part of the criminal justice system, actors working in the criminal justice system. There may be that cases that should have been that should have led to convictions did not, due to actions and decisions of policymakers and prosecutors' offices and things like that. But we just don't know enough about it at this point to say that for sure.
Yeah, and again, a tough question to ask, but it's a question that a lot of folks have had, and certainly I've gotten. Can you walk me through sort of the coordination between, when it comes to repeat offenders, law enforcement, the coordination between law enforcement, the courts, and mental health services? Can you walk me through that?
Sure. So, first of all, when a case goes to the courts, when someone's been arrested and charged, law enforcement always cooperates with the courts, where they send officers to testify in terms of what they saw at a scene or what kinds of evidence they collected and that sort of thing. Mental health facilities would also be called in, particularly if someone has a history of mental health crisis or mental illness, diagnosis. Then mental health professionals who work those cases would also be called in and coordinate with the courts as well as law enforcement. And then, of course, mental health and law enforcement works together. When there's a call of a dangerous person, they often work hand in hand to try to figure out how to help the person or get them off the streets if necessary for public safety.
Does public outcry, when it comes to, I guess, when we look forward, do you think that will factor into future cases?
It often does. Prosecutor offices will make the best decision they think is justified based on the evidence first. The amount of evidence and the quality of evidence is the best determinant of what happens in a criminal case going forward. But public outcry and what victims' friends and families demand also often plays the role in decision making by prosecutors as well.
Again, this is Dr. Matthew Robinson with App State University, professor of criminal justice. You've been so generous with your time. My last question before I get you out of here, what would you want to see happen moving forward when it comes to, and look, North Carolina, there have been initiatives, and they're from the state level and also from local organizations to help repeat offenders. But what would you like to see happen when it comes to the justice system to aid that?
Ideally, the justice system will use evidence-based policies. There are things that we know work to deal with repeat offenders. There are things that we know work to deal with violent offenders. There are things that we know work to deal with mentally ill offenders. And these programs and policies have been summarized by websites such as crimesolutions.gov, which is a Department of Justice website. And so we know, what works to reduce these types of crimes. And so ideally, law enforcement agencies, for example, should review these policies and programs, which are, again, publicly available, and start to implement them at the local level. So we should see these policies in every city in America, as well as at state level. So that's ideally what I would like to see happen, is that these policies that have been carefully researched by researchers all over the country and documented to show effectiveness should be utilized in places like Charlotte to make sure these kinds of crimes are less likely to happen going forward.
Just a quick follow-up. That seems pretty simple, and it seems logical. Why, again, from your vantage point, do we continue to have this conversation and something like that hasn't been implemented?
Part of it is, these policies and programs may not be known about by law enforcement officials. So this is the job of people like me, academics, to bring this research forward to policymakers at the city and state level, for example, to let them know about these programs and policies so that they can be put into place. And that's one of the things I'm working on now, is summarizing this research for the public and for policymakers in order to bring it to them so that we can implement these types of programs and policies within law enforcement that are shown to work.
Dr. Matthew Robinson, criminal justice professor at Appalachian State University. Thank you for your time. Again, you answered a lot of questions that folks have had over the weekend. A lot of folks are upset after seeing this video, and again, had a lot of questions. So thank you for your time, for clearing up and giving some context on this situation.
Oh, there are now questions about whether the suspects slipped through the cracks of our mental health system. We know how important mental health is. So our Jesse Pierre took those questions to Tracy Hummel, the Chief Operating Officer at Starmount Healthcare. She wants to learn more here.
Off when we're, again, same first question, this incident happened, what went through your mind? And I don't know if, safety was a big thing, but also mental health is the other thing that's popping up. So kind of talk to me about, what are the, mental health aspects that come into play for you when you saw this incident happen.
First, heartache for this individual who was seeking respite from Ukraine, thinking she's come to a safe place, and having to, her life having to be taken in this way is just, it's really unfortunate. But because I'm living in a space of mental health and hearing about all the issues that exist, I thought for sure this individual, unprovoked, is dealing with a mental health issue that has gone untreated.
Now, we talked a little bit earlier about this, but, and I don't know if there's data or stats to say the percentage of people who have mental health illness that actually do a violent crime. Because what we don't want to project is that because you have mental health illness, you're going to be violent.
Right. I mean, in North Carolina, we have 11 million residents, and of those, probably 75% are not dealing with a mental health issue. It could be up to 30% that have a mental health issue that's just been left untreated. I know in particular for youth, because that is a priority of ours, there are about 2.2 million youth in North Carolina. 20% of them have a mental health diagnosis. However, 72% are not receiving adequate treatment. And as youth left untreated, our youth are becoming adolescents, are becoming young adults, and they're finding themselves in these situations where they have untreated illnesses, and it's unfortunately leading to criminal acts.
And I was going to say, so what are the things that it leads to? Is there other things outside of criminal acts that you can say?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a quality of life. If you're dealing with a mental health issue, it's impacting your ability to get employment. It's impacting your ability to have a family, to raise children, to just be a contributing member of society, because you can't function if you have a mental health issue that's been left untreated.
It's so interesting because I think years ago when it came to mental health, it was so taboo, now everyone has a therapist, and there's the feeling of oh, it's so much more welcoming and so forth. But then on the other side of that, for those who have and correct me if I'm wrong, those who are having the I would say harder, mental illness issues and so forth, it seems like there's a disconnect when it comes to getting some level of support, services, etc. So talk to me about or I don't know, is there a disconnect? I don't know if that made sense.
No, yeah, I think we've come a long way, and I think North Carolina particularly has really tried to prioritize and create an emphasis around mental health and the need, especially post-pandemic. I think we've seen such a rise in youth having suicidal ideations or adults having suicidal ideations. I think 1 in 5 kids has considered suicide. We had over 10,000 youth come through our healthcare system and emergency departments expressing suicidal ideation. And I think that the stigma is getting better because we're talking about it, and we look up to people in the community and nationally, and they're talking about their mental health issues, and all of that is going to support these kids or adults that are suffering from this and afraid to talk about it. So the stigma, I think, will continue to exist, but we've made a lot of progress, and I think we'll continue to make a lot of progress.
When it comes to the biggest challenges where we are right now, and how would you describe this? Well, first, how would you describe the state of the mental health care system today? And then what would you say the biggest challenges are, the things that we're lacking most of to make a real difference? And not saying that we're not making a difference, but to move us forward.
It's a national issue, but in North Carolina in particular, we rank 42nd out of 50 for access to quality behavioral health care, which is one of the reasons why we thought, wow, this is embarrassing. We are doing a terrible job here across our state in terms of servicing individuals with this need. So prioritizing mental health, which is what our state is doing and what our local communities are doing, and Katie Blessing Center is definitely a way in which we believe we can help by having inpatient beds, by having urgent care services, by having residential treatment, by helping to connect the dots within these other providers who are trying to service these kids. Also, in North Carolina, we have around 350 psychiatrists that are focused on child and adolescent mental health issues, and I don't believe that that's clearly not enough when we have 2.2 million children and we have 20% of them with a mental health issue that's been left untreated. So there's a shortage of providers, and I think going back to the stigma, the more we're talking about this, the more we can encourage young people to start understanding mental health as a part of physical health and well-being, and we can explore that at a young age and encourage them to go into the field of mental health. We're going to help chip away at that shortage of providers that we have today that can really provide the timely care that we need for these individuals.
Where you got the 4250 ranking, can you send me wherever that came from?
Yeah.
Do you happen to know, like, what is it that made North Carolina so low?
I think it's just the lack of facilities, the shortage of beds, the lack of providers, and the lack of quality services for the existing facilities that we have in terms of the outcomes that we're seeing across our community of individuals that are continuing to suffer from mental health issues and they're not being treated. And I do believe, and I can send you this stat as well, but we have around 300 beds specifically allocated towards youth and adolescents, and on a given day we might have 150 kids sitting in emergency departments waiting for a bed. They may wait for a month, they may wait for up to a year because there's nowhere for them to go based on what they're dealing with and the access that we have for them.
And you touched on a good point, the fact that, like, you have people going to hospitals and dealing with CMPD in the court system rather than hospitals that work. Kind of but why is that happening? Like, is it okay? Well, maybe I'm not saying it right. So, are all the beds that you were saying when it comes to youth and so forth, those are taken?
They may be taken. They may be in facilities where there's no staff to treat them. So they're just left sitting there, and there's nobody there that can take care of the kids to go into those beds. So it's a combination of things, but there's definitely a shortage of inpatient beds across our state for youth in particular, which is what we've been prioritizing in order to ensure that these youth are not growing up in a society where they have an untreated mental health issue and an unfortunate situation of what happened on the train.
When it comes to, like, you know, the top things you would want to see to improve our mental health system, what would you say are the top things for you?
Continuing to talk about it, and our state legislators and council members and local leaders, the more they emphasize the importance of addressing these mental health issues, whether in school systems with our educators, so that we can truly intervene at an early age when we start to see these issues. I think funding is always going to have to be prioritized. If without funding going into these facilities so that they can ensure that they're providing quality care, that we're paying the staff that are doing a really hard job working with really challenged individuals are getting paid appropriately, and that we have true therapeutic interventions and quality care so that these facilities can sustain themselves, and that we're improving the outcomes so we don't continue to have these readmittance of untreated illnesses and these individuals going back into the community without the true help that they need.
Perfect. Anything else that you feel like I'm missing or that I should add or that you want to add? Or I should have asked. I mean,
no, I don't think so.
Of course, concerns about public transportation and safety on that are not a Charlotte-specific issue. Of course, other cities have had this discussion many times. WCNC Charlotte Bria Smith looking into how other cities across the country are trying to keep people safe on buses and other transportation modes. And following the public anger about this tragedy, Cats and Charlotte City leaders, they're holding a meeting to discuss what happened. During the hours-long meeting, though, Cats leadership, they spoke about the concerns and challenges that Cats face when dealing with safety. Here's an extended clip from that meeting.
You mentioned, Mr. Cagle, you mentioned the survey. Have we surveyed the drivers? Because I've heard that the drivers don't feel safe. Do we have information from the drivers on how they feel as far as safety?
Let me check. I'm not sure. We do survey employees. I'm not sure when the last survey was, but I can go back and get that data. I believe that what we are hearing is accurate, right? Operators, this has shaken, these events shake all of us, the entire community, operators, staff, riders, everyone. And so certainly this has an effect on operators, and the violence against operators certainly has effect. What we have heard is, again, I'll pull the data, but that we are moving in the right direction. The CTC is visibly changed. It's not perfect today, but it's far better than it was. Removing an operator's sense of obligation to enforce those fares has helped.
So let me ask you about that.
Mm-hmm.
If a person does not pay their fare, and this kind of piggybacks off what Councilmember Mayfield was saying, if they don't pay their fare, is there any reporting of that? Is there a call made, or is that kind of just accepted?
Yeah, so the operators have the ability to record that. There's a button on the fare box that says, in effect, didn't pay.
Okay.
So they record that. Do they call for security immediately? Not always.
Okay.
If there are other reasons why, yes. That alone, not always. But that recording of non-payment then becomes data that security can review so that they understand where that is occurring most frequently, and they start to position security folks to do that fare enforcement.
Thank you. Mr. Jones, can we get a report of missed fares? Can you get that to council? Because that speaks to the revenue, and we just want to know how big of an issue that is. Thank you. You mentioned that we could not change the system to a closed system because of the design on some of the stops. But are there stops that we could change to closed stations? And you don't have to answer that now, but I'd like to kind of explore that or just get some information on what that would take.
I can answer that now, yes.
Okay.
Generally speaking, they will be on the Blue Line extension or other areas not in Center City or South End. But yes, there are some stations that are large enough that, yes, you could install turnstiles or those kinds of things. You still have the problem of someone trying to evade fares by walking up the tracks, because the tracks themselves cannot be enclosed because they cross roads frequently. But I would say I would be concerned about the safety of someone trying to evade fares by walking up the tracks.
Okay.
I also would be concerned about partially closing the system and the effect that has from an equity standpoint.
Thank you. Okay, and how can the public get a copy of this presentation? I think there was a Facebook issue or a problem with Facebook.
We can make it available. This presentation will also be given tomorrow at 9 a.m. with the MTC.
Okay.
So it will also be available via the city's website where the MTC data presentations are available. But we can make it available. I will work with communications and Jason Schneider's team to make the presentation available.
Great, thank you. And kudos on the progress with the CATS Connect. I think that's important to integrate the mental health services. Mr. Eric or Mr. Osmus, you mentioned that jails aren't hospitals or CMPD officers can't be mental health professionals. You're absolutely right. And so I would say that jails can't be hospitals either. This one, it seems to be a mental health problem. It was reported, or I heard, I didn't read it, so I want to be sure. Do we know if Mr. Brown had a previous court date where he was found not competent to
I do not know. I've seen what was reported, and it seems that he had had several incidents or